U.S. Army veteran, still serving.
Hmm.
It's March 12th of 2021. We are at 500 Market Street in Steubenville, Ohio. So yeah, let's just start off with your basic identifiers: name, highest rank achieved, what branch, and then date of birth.
Okay. So my name is James Gorrell. Currently, I'm a sergeant first class in the United States Army. I've served both on the Army and the Army Reserve. Born May 9th, 1987. From the area here originally. So.
Okay, perfect. Pull it a little closer if you wouldn't
Oh
mind.
yeah, sorry.
No, because we try to go with four fingers. So,
Yeah.
So why'd you join? Let's start there.
Oh, that's kind of the age-old question. I hear that a
Uh-huh.
lot. So, for myself, growing up, I grew up in a small town. I grew up in Hammondsville, Irondale area.
Okay.
Kind of growing up, you kind of get the small Ohio Valley lifestyle. You kind of want to venture out, watching movies, TV shows. You kind of always fantasize about what's out there. And then going into high school, I mean, that's kind of a turbulent time as it is. And my freshman year in high school was when September 11th happened. So that kind of just opened my eyes to the reality of the world, and kind of the feelings I got from that were something that I wanted to do something to impact life in a more positive way, to not feel like a victim if I see things like this, to not feel helpless and actually do something. And I think as a lot of people my generation, a lot of veterans from that time frame, that was kind of our focus and reason for joining. So
No doubt. So a lot of guys say they remember where they were on September 11th, 2001. Where were you?
okay,
You remember?
yeah, that's always a funny story I tell people. So I was actually home from school that day.
Okay.
Not gonna lie, I wasn't the best for going to school frequently. So I actually got woken up. We didn't have cable at the time, so my mom was listening to it on the radio, and I kind of woke up. I think for the most part everything had already happened, so we were all kind of in the shock of it. And I listened to it on the radio, and then I went back to school the next day, and everybody, we talked about it for weeks after, and rewatched it, and everybody had their speculations on what might have happened, cause wise. So yeah, I was home sleeping ultimately.
Well,
Um,
it's not hard to forget that when
Oh,
you're
yeah.
at home sleeping. So, okay, mom and dad, they still around?
They are.
Both
My
of them?
my mom and dad both actually live here downtown Steubenville. We, like I said, I grew up in Irondale for the most part. My dad's originally from Newcastle, so he's actually bounced back and forth. He works down at MPW in Mingo, but he's bounced between Butler, so he's lived back in the Newcastle area. He's from actually New Brighton originally. My mom is from the East Liverpool area, so she's been here her whole life. But yeah, they're downtown Steubenville, which is nice for my wife and I with military, having family local to be able to help us out. My wife's job is very demanding as well, so having them local gives us that family. So,
Well, while we're talking about your wife, what does she do?
so my wife is a physical therapy assistant. She's actually a director of operations for rehab facilities. She does right now more traveling than I do. She just got back from Maryland last night, and she'll be going to Florida here in a couple weeks for her job again.
Okay.
So now that I'm, in recruiting and I'm here, more frequently, it seems like her job is picking up and taking her across the country. So,
Well, in these times, COVID times, it's nice that you guys are both still employed.
Oh, definitely.
That's definitely a blessing in itself. So,
Mhm.
brothers and sisters.
so I have one brother, a twin brother actually, and I have two sisters, a younger sister and an older sister.
Okay. And just to circle back for a second, do your parents, did either one of them serve?
No, my mom, I believe, had looked into I think it was the Air Force back in the 80s. Her brother, my Uncle Danny, actually served in the Air Force for 4 years back in the 80s. And growing up around him, that was a big impact for me, and hearing his stories and how much he enjoyed the military. So that even at a young age, that was kind of my focus growing up was, I may look into the military when I get to be of age. And so he's definitely somebody that, was an impact on me as a child. So
That's good. Now, your brothers and sister, or your brother and your sisters, did either any of them join?
So I actually joined through the Army originally for active duty with my brother. So we joined
That's awesome.
under what was called the buddy program. And we actually weren't close being twins. We weren't that close in high school. Like I said, it's kind of a time where everybody tries to find themselves. So we had our own kind of groups, and we didn't hang out that much or really get along for the most part. Somehow, some way, our recruiter talked to us. Them pesky recruiters tend to have a way to do that.
Yeah.
But talked to us and explained that we're both interested. And the Army has a program where, if two people decide to join together, they can go, as long as they take the same job, they can go to basic training together, job training together, and get stationed together. So we both chose to be combat medics. So we spent basic training together, which I don't recommend going to basic training with your twin brother. The drill sergeants tend to already know your name. And then we went to Fort Sam for medical training together. And then we got stationed at Fort Drum together. And then actually deployed together. So I think we kind of put my mom through hell for the first 4 years that we were in the Army. So
I feel bad for your mom.
Oh, yeah.
If she listens to it, I really, yeah, you're a saint, lady, ma'am.
Mhm.
You are a saint. So that is a really cool story, and I don't think many people have that
Oh,
experience.
no, definitely.
So now you're brothers in two different ways, I would assume.
Oh, yeah, and we are much closer. I say my brother's my best friend. He's the guy I go to when, I have military stories to tell.
Right.
He helps, he understands when I say, hey, I got promoted today. He's like, oh, no crap. That's awesome. So he definitely gets it on levels that, your normal friends don't or other family members might not. So it's definitely brought us closer together. He's actually moved out west now. So
Where's he
he's doing
stationed?
something. He's actually out. He got out after active duty, did
Okay.
a short stint in the reserve, and then he used the GI Bill and moved actually out to Denver, got his degree in animation, and he's living out in Washington right now. So.
Okay, you guys stay.
Oh yeah, we
Stay in
stay in
contact.
touch. We FaceTime. He comes home every now and again. He's real close to my daughter. Obviously, it's kind of to my daughter's probably vision now. She's kind of got two dads with us looking the same.
That would be odd.
Yeah. So I always make the joke that if I need to leave for the military to not scar my daughter, he can come and kind of pretend to be me for a little bit. But.
And, yeah, I'm sure that he could. Well, on a separate note, we need to bring him in here when he's in town. Get a
Definitely.
hold of me.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Yep.
we'll make some work. We'll make some time for him too. But so walk me through kind of the MEPS process into basic training. Just give me an idea of what's going on there. How did that happen? How did it feel? Anything you remember? Anything?
Okay. So for me, it was. I wouldn't say I was kind of in shock and awe. I mean, everything kind of happened quick. Our recruiter came into our school back in Edison. I graduated from Edison. Came in, I think it was late our junior year, and it was a real brief conversation. He passed out cards. I don't really think recruiters were that welcome into schools maybe at the time. I would say probably because, what the media portrayed the Iraq War as and just what the military was envisioned to be at the time. But he had come in real briefly, kind of introduced himself, passed out some cards, said if you have any interest in the military, please fill these cards out. I think it was probably a 5-minute process. Passed the card back in, and next thing I knew, a couple weeks later, I was getting a phone call at home, and obviously this is before cell phones. So
Right.
and living in Irondale, I didn't get that phone calls that often. I was barely at the house, so you have a grown man calling the house asking for you, asking about your future. It's kind of like, yes, sir. You're like,
Right.
real respectful conversation. But he just asked if I'd be willing to sit down, have a conversation, see what I'm eligible to do. I said, of course, I'm interested in the military. I want to sit down. So he came out to my house, sat down with me, was just going over, gave me a kind of pre-qualification questionnaire just to make sure that I was eligible, make sure that I would pass the ASVAB when I took it. And that's actually when my brother walked in the house. I think that's kind of when the light bulb went off to my recruiter that he would ask my brother. And it was I didn't think my brother wanted the service. My brother was a 4.1 GPA in high school. I think he was
wow.
11th in the class. So yeah, my brother said the same thing. Yeah, I'd be willing to talk. And then that's when he got into the question about what kind of job would you like to do. And for me, anatomy and physiology was a class in high school that caught my interest. It really kind of, I was invested in it. I liked the class. So when he brought up, I could do medical. Obviously I didn't have to have any training. That's kind of where my interest went towards, was medical field or mechanical field, because my uncle was in mechanics. I like working with my hands. So he said, well, we'll see how your score goes. You'll sit down, you'll see the job list, and you get to choose from it. So he scheduled us to go up to MEPS. My brother, actually at the time too, and we still do referral programs now, but that's what he told me. He's like, well, your brother's going to join. You'll get a promotion out of it because it's, a referral program. So that's why I always kind of make the joke too, because my brother got through MEPS on his first go around.
Okay.
I didn't get through the first time. I had to actually go back to MEPS the second time. So because of that, my brother got in before me, so he got the referral.
Oh, that's
so I always make the joke. Obviously, I got him in, and then he got the promotion out of it too. So he outranked me for about the first year we were in the Army. But we joined late summer, our junior going into our senior year. And the great thing, we knew what job we had. We knew we were leaving right out, shortly after high school. So yeah, throughout high school, we just came into our recruiting station, which was actually in this building. It was down in the first floor, which I see they've made some nice renovations downstairs. So, but we came in here for training, every week or so. Ran track my high school my senior year, so that kind of kept me busy too. And just prepared for shipping off to basic training.
Well, running track and sports, I would assume, was helpful for
Most
basic
definitely.
training. Yeah,
Most definitely.
there's a little bit of running involved in that, isn't there?
Oh, just a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
Just a little bit. So, and
mile
that's something,
or two every now and again.
and that's something I see nowadays, especially the pay-to-play programs that were coming around. A lot more kids aren't taking part in any sports. So when we get people coming in talking with us about the service for the military, some things that scare people is the fact that they don't work out, period, for years.
Okay.
So then going to basic training nowadays, it's more a potential detriment. We see stress fracture issues, things like that. So I do feel prepared, like I was prepared for basic training. Not maybe as much as I should have been, but
Well, how do you prepare for something like that without any prior knowledge? I mean, you had your uncle, obviously, but really having no idea. I think it would be a shocking time to join the military. And, it's not. I wouldn't assume it'd be fun or easy. Okay, so we got through MEPS second time. What was the reason why you didn't get through MEPS the first time, if you don't mind to share?
No, I brought up an issue. I actually had, I guess, an ingrown toenail at the time.
Okay.
And I kind of pointed it out, and the doctor was like, well, if you think it's an issue, yep, you need to go get it taken care of. So then I probably, pushed my recruiter's buttons. So if Sergeant Twig or Sergeant Willoughby are listening, I apologize. I understand as a recruiter now your heartache. But yeah, so I had to go see a civilian doctor, get everything taken care of, then get their clearance to be able to go back up to MEPS. And the doctor looked at me and said, yep, you're good. It was that simple, and signed my contract. So
how long did it take? What was the process?
That took a few weeks, just because of healing. You have to be fully healed and everything. So just a couple weeks, get the appointment, get it taken care of, and then heal up, and then schedule to go back to MEPS.
Does it make sense to you, the process now that you've
100%,
been in?
100%. I know so much more about the Army. I feel like being in recruiting alone, and seeing the process and understanding it. I think at the time, because so many people were joining the Army too, it was just such a quick process and such a, yay or nay, whatnot. So we do a good job. We really focus on explaining the process to people that come and talk to us. And to me, that's kind of what I feel maybe I wasn't prepared enough for MEPS, was just kind of, hey, you're going to go at this time. You're going to see this kind of doctor. They're going to ask you this kind of question. And that way you just kind of know. I mean, especially kids nowadays where you got parents escorting you everywhere. You go into MEPS completely by yourself.
Yeah.
So for some people, it might be the first time they ever talk to a doctor without somebody else standing there answering the questions for them.
I never thought about that. That would be trying on somebody who's young and, impressionable and not really know what they're getting themselves into.
Not only that, having an authority figure kind of asking you questions, you're
definitely
intimidated a little bit. So.
Are they nice doctors? Are they mean doctors?
Yeah, I'd say most all MEPS doctors are civilian doctors.
Okay.
For them, it's kind of a new thing. That's kind of, we use two different MEPS. We use Cleveland MEPS and Pittsburgh MEPS. Cleveland MEPS seems to always have new doctors coming.
Okay.
And their license are on the line, so we understand they're, a seasoned doctor at MEPS knows the military process.
Right.
New doctors, they don't take chances on anything. If there's a irregular looking mole, then they're like, nope, you're disqualified. You got to go get that mole looked at.
Well, can't blame them, honestly.
No, you can't. No, that's why I explain to kids too. I was like, I know it's frustrating. You're making multiple trips, but the military as a whole takes responsibility for you. So your life insurance, your health insurance, when you separate, you got things that you can claim. If you have anything issue-wise, the military's taking responsibility, so they got to be thorough.
So, yeah, I mean, I know it makes it hard as a recruiter. I'm sure it makes it difficult, and it can be a stressful thing, but at least we all understand the process and as to why it's going there. So before we go to basic training, why the Army? Why not the Marines, Navy, or Air Force?
Okay, so and I don't bash any branch. I know a lot of people. We all joke, and this is one thing I do want to say disclaimer-wise. I've had a lot of people come to me and they're like, why are you guys trash talking the other branches? I'm like, if you're not in the military, you don't understand.
Right.
It's like we all joke with the same with your brothers, your sisters. You have a brother who goes to one college, you go to another college, you're going to say your college is better than their college. And that's all most of us ever do. I see the Marines do it a lot there, and I respect their pride in the Marine Corps. But for me, I was actually originally interested in the Air Force.
Okay.
Because of my uncle. So I came into this building, and I went to talk to the Air Force recruiter, I don't know if it was end of day for him or what it was, but he was walking out of the office as I was trying to, get his attention, ask him if I could talk to him. And he was like, okay, yeah, the Army is right over there.
Really?
And no joke. And that was my run-in with potentially joining the Air Force. So the Army, I mean, I do, like I said, again, I thank Sergeant Willoughby and Sergeant Twiggs for sitting and talking with me, explaining the process.
Right.
And giving me the time of day. I understand being a young junior in high school, a lot of kids are like, oh, I want to be this, I want to be that. And
right.
I can see you getting frustrated with it, but at the same time, you got to treat everybody the way you want to be treated.
No doubt.
Sons, daughters, if you were a parent, you found out your kid was, ignored when they had questions, it would get frustrating. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you've said it great there, because I would have been pissed too.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, it would have been very frustrating for me to walk in and be like, oh, well, hey, bye. Sorry about your luck. So, okay, so we got why you joined the Army. Now we got through MEPS. We're now done, second time through. Then what happens? Where'd you go to basic training?
So I got assigned to Fort Benning, Georgia for basic training.
Okay. How does that work? Sorry to interrupt. But
no,
how does that
worries.
work?
So our basic training assignments are all kind of just because basic training is a requirement for everybody.
Yep.
Every branch has their own form, but for Army, right now we have 4 locations. We used to have, I believe, 5. Fort Knox is no longer a basic training site.
I thought there was only 2. So
no, yep, there's 4. So we got Fort Benning, Georgia, Fort Sill, Oklahoma, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and Fort Jackson, South Carolina. So some jobs in the Army are what we call one station unit training, meaning that for that job, that MOS, you're going to go to one location, which is always the same location, and you're going to be there for your basic and your job training back to back.
Okay.
For a lot more of our jobs, we have over 150 jobs, so the majority of them are support jobs in some form or fashion. So those individuals go to basic training to meet the basic Army requirements, and then they go to their job training, their AIT as the Army calls it, to knock out their job training. So that job training is dependent on the MOS, but basic training is not. So really the Army just looks at what they can slot opening-wise for those requirements for basic. And then they backfill them. So we look out, as a recruiter now, we have different categories. So we look at graduates. Graduates, we look about a month to 3 months out. Juniors and seniors only have one set time frame that they typically leave, and that's the summer.
Okay.
So typically June, July, August is focused on grads and seniors, or seniors and juniors, and then the rest of the year is focused on your grad categories. So then the Army just backfills it based on that.
Okay.
So for me, like I said, I got Fort Benning. Me and my brother both went to Fort Benning, and then we went to Fort Sam for a job training.
So you say supporting functions. What support? What do you mean by supporting functions?
So our medical job. I mean, you think about the Army as a job. So the primary job within the Army is infantry. That's the number one MOS. So combat operations, peacetime operations, that's typically executed by our infantry soldiers. So to conduct their operations, they need to be fed, they need to be housed, they need to be transported, they need medical care, dental care, so on and so forth. So that's where all the other jobs come into play. So your, human resource, they do the records for every soldier in the Army. Medics, we take care of the medical treatment, emergency care, sick call procedures for every soldier in the Army. Your transport personnel, they transport everybody. They, inventory and PMCS vehicles, things like that. So really the Army, for the most part, I mean, there are jobs, obviously, if you say teacher, we don't have teachers in the Army, but we do have instructors. There is very close to every job outside of the military within the Army.
Okay.
So it's essentially its own separate operating city, a military base. I compare it to a city. So within that city, you're going to have everything you might have in Steubenville. You're going to have behavioral health resources. You're going to have a dental clinic, a vet clinic, shops. We do have a lot of civilian jobs that supplement those things. Cooks, for instance, and that's a great thing. A lot of the cooks I know, they're in love with it. It's a culinary training. It's not just fast food order. You're learning actually how to prepare high class meals in some circumstances. So there's really no, and that's what I try to tell people. There's no one job that's better than the other job. If it's something that you're passionate about, do it in the Army. Let the Army pay you to do it and pay for it.
Pay you to get trained.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really good point, to know that it's not just that no job is more important than the other. Everyone relies on everybody else.
Oh yeah, so. It's a well-oiled machine. It's got to be. So.
No doubt. So now let's go to basic. What was first day of basic? What's it like?
First day of basic training. So you get to reception. For me, it was kind of a pucker factor. You know, you get
Okay.
off the plane, you're like, any minute now, I'm gonna start getting yelled at. You know, it's a long, arduous bus ride from the airport to Fort Benning. Any minute now, somebody's gonna get on the bus. You pull up, still quiet, and then you watch drill sergeant walk out, get on the bus, real calm. You know, kind of going over, you know, welcome to Fort Benning, Georgia. You are now part of the United States Army. You know, going through the whole spiel, and then you kind of, I don't remember them yelling at that point, but it was speaking with purpose, if you will. Getting off the bus, getting lined up. This is 11 o'clock at night, I think, when we got there. Tired. You know, we got up at 4 o'clock that morning. Um, got in line, got in, gave us a Jimmy Dean meal, which I thought was going to be every meal I get in the Army was a Jimmy Dean meal. We sat down, we eat it while we're getting some briefs. They get us our rooms assigned, or our barracks assigned in 30th AG down at Fort Benning. We go bunk down, and it's kind of like you're sitting there. You can't sleep, kind of heart's pounding. You're like, did I make the right decision? And we're everybody's kind of talking. You had some people that had already been to basic. They were there for their, you know, we had our split ship, which are, you know, our reserve soldiers that were coming back just for job training. So they were telling us a little bit about their experience last summer with the drill sergeants and basic training.
Okay.
So we're hearing lingo that don't make sense. I remember one of the guys said, "Oh, you know, we got the shit smoked out of us by this drill sergeant." I was like, "What does smoking mean?" Like, he's like, "Oh, don't worry, you'll find out." So, and then the next day it was, you know, we started the processing. So we got our shots, got our hair cut, started going through our medical records, our medical jacket that they gave us, got lined up, got our shots, uniforms, got the measurements done. And then that kind of stuff went on for, I think, 2 days. I wasn't in reception very long, which is nice. I've heard people being in reception for weeks. Right
Okay.
now with COVID, I think they have a quarantining phase, but for the most part, the reception still moves pretty fast. And then the day come that the drill sergeants were coming to pick us up. So we had to get all our stuff packed up, all our new issued clothing and duffel bags. And then we had a formation. The drill sergeants came. They were in dress uniform, real quiet, real calm. We were like, oh, this is kind of nice, you know, little ceremony, very much the calm before the storm. The drill sergeants march us onto the bus. I think there was 4 or 5 buses. It was a whole company of us. And then it's quiet bus ride. No music on the bus, no talking, nothing. Everybody's just head and eyes forward. Like, you can really feel the tension. And then we pull up in front of the barracks, and that's when the shark attack started.
Okay.
So yelling, screaming, it really, really exciting, in my opinion. Something we mentioned a little bit earlier. It's the best, you know, basic training's the best 2 months you never want to have again.
Yeah.
So yeah, we get off the bus, we're running, grabbing our stuff. For the most part, I mean, some of the people, the drill sergeants are really good about identifying the right type of person, and those are the people they flock to. So you always want to kind of be the invisible person. If you make it through basic training and the drill sergeant still doesn't know your name, you did something right. But again, going as a twin, the drill sergeants knew my name pretty quick. So we get formed up, and then the drill sergeants, they all start introducing themselves, and they start going down the roster. They say, you know, this is going to be first platoon, and then they call off a bunch of names. If you don't hear your name, you're not in that platoon. And as they're calling your name, they have you grab your stuff and go report to that formation area.
Okay.
So when the drill sergeant said Gorrell, I didn't know which Gorrell they talked about.
I was just going to ask that.
Yeah.
That's
So
going to
he
be an
said-
awkward moment.
He said Gorrell, and then he stops and he's like, "There's 2 of you?" And we're like, "Roger, drill sergeant." But he didn't say, and this is the one thing. And again, common sense. You don't need common sense. So I didn't hear Gorrell said twice. I just heard Gorrell said once. So my brother had formed, and this was for 4th platoon. My brother had gone over, and I'm like one of the last people standing there. All the names were called. I'm like, "Drill sergeant, I didn't hear my name called." He's like, "What's your fucking name?" He's like, "I said it. I said there's 2 of you." And I was like, "Well, you didn't say both of us, though, drill sergeant. You just said Gorrell." So then they formed us up. They're like, "You know something? We want you guys to fight against each other. You guys are going to be competing in the Pugo stick. So we're going to put one of you in 3rd platoon and one of you in 4th platoon." So then drill or basic training became, it was constant throughout the 2 months we were there. It became the every event was which Gorrell's platoon did better. And it was constantly like, and that was the big thing when the Pugo sticks come up and we were learning the combatives. We were the first 2 that were pulled out to go against each other. And yes, my brother did beat me on that. So.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, haven't you and your brother fought before? Like, this isn't going to be new.
No. Our biggest fight I'll call my cousin out for this when we were real little. wrestling was big. So when my cousin would babysit us, he'd be like, "I'll pay you guys a quarter to fight each other." So my parents weren't happy about that when they'd get home. But yeah. So and again, that brought us closer together because we didn't think we were gonna be separated.
Right.
So we'd see each other in passing throughout basic training. But for me, it was nice. And this is why I tell people, I'm like, if you're interested in the buddy program, really understand how close of friends you are. Because you get there, you might not be as close as you thought you were. Now you're stuck with them for 2 months. And then everything that they do wrong, you did wrong. So, but for us, it gave me my independence. I wasn't necessarily only known as, oh, you're one of the Gorrells. It was, no, you're Gorrell in this platoon. So
Yeah, because it would have been like that through high school,
Oh,
through
yeah.
grade school, high school, everything.
Always.
With the Gorrell twins.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I think that's how we knew you in high
Mhm.
school, was
And
the
that's-
Gorrell twins.
That's something I always tell people. I'm like, I had a bigger group of friends than I realized because all my brother's friends just kind of inadvertently knew me anyway.
Right.
So it was nice on that aspect. My brother hung out with kind of the smarter kids. I kind of hung out with the lazier kids.
Wow.
No offense to my friends, but
Well, obviously you're not lazy now. You've done a
Yeah.
lot of things in your life, so
Mhm.
whether they did or not doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, you did. You've definitely done some stuff at this point in your life. So,
Mhm.
so the Gorrell twins go to fight for the first time
Yeah.
in the army.
in the army.
Okay,
In the army.
so now where we at?
So that was midway through. I mean, we learned combatives. At the end of basic, I mean, we learned through weapons quals and things like that. We didn't see each other too often. I will say, because I don't think the drill sergeants will care at this point. We used to sneak back and forth between the platoon bays and bullshit with each other and whatnot. One life lesson, I will say this, and I'm sure my mom will probably hear this eventually. Me and her had a conversation about it back then when it happened. But as a parent, don't call basic training asking about your kid.
Oh my god!
So phone calls, and we warn everybody when they leave, phone calls are a privilege in basic training. You may
No
get
doubt.
one, you may get none, you may get a bunch. So my platoon was always winning the different phases in basic training. So each time a platoon would do well, typically the drill sergeant would reward them with some extra downtime or a 10-minute phone call. So I went like 3 weeks in a row. On Sundays, I'd get like a 5-minute call. And then my mom was like, well, I'm not hearing from JW, my brother. So she called down to basic training to ask why I'm getting phone calls and my brother's not, if something was wrong. All the drill sergeants had a field day. I'll just say that.
I couldn't imagine.
Oh, yeah. So talk about embarrassing. But again, it's going to training and joining the service. It's stressful on family. It's not just you doing it.
Right.
Your parents back home, if you have a spouse or whatever the case is. My wife's dealt with me being away for extended periods. It's stressful on them as well, and that's something the military I do appreciate for, because the military does have support out there. But you gotta keep in mind, the military service isn't just your decision. It's
Well, how about your sisters? I meant to ask that
Mhm.
earlier, and we kind of got into things, but did it affect your sisters?
I think for the most part, my little sister always looked up to us. We were always kind of protective of her. My older sister was already out,
Right.
on her own. She had her own family and kids. But we communicated for the most part. And I'd say we didn't really ever talk much about how it necessarily impacted them. I think it was just kind of understood that we were trying to do something that was right, something that was, something to be proud of. So we were ultimately making some form of sacrifice for everybody's betterment. But yeah, our little sister was still in high school, so we'd write her letters, keep in contact when we could. Phone calls are brief and whatnot, so I don't necessarily remember any specific conversations about anything like that. But
Yeah, but the awesome thing is you had a great. I mean, it sounds like you and your brother had a great support system
Mhm.
beyond each other.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And I mean, not everybody has that.
no, they don't. And
So
that's really a foundation of success in general, in or out of the military,
No
is
doubt.
your support system.
Yeah.
It's tough to do anything by yourself, but especially if your foundation is cracked or has holes in it, then you're gonna have problems.
well, it's just like you said before. Every job in the military is a support function for something.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to have those same support functions in your life. So
most definitely.
that's an awesome thing that you and your brother both had those.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, basic training. We've got through the fights. Any other notable stories? Basic training, graduation. Like what happens?
Yeah,
How's it go?
Nothing that really stands out in my mind as far as specific events. Let's see, graduation, obviously. So my platoon won honor platoon, which was good. So I'll at least take
Awesome.
that.
Yeah, take
bragging
that credit.
right. Yeah. But then graduation. So my little sister, my mom, and my mom's old man at the time drove down, and so we got to have graduation, which was nice. Very prideful moment. That was definitely something. Family members always see it more than the soldier going through, because it's for them. It's a sudden change. They haven't seen you in 2 months,
Right.
and now they're seeing you. So I joined at 135 pounds. I did weightlifting in high school, but for the life of me, I couldn't put on weight. Basic training, after 2 months, I put on 20 pounds.
Oh, wow.
So that was a big difference. I was
Yeah.
155 when I graduated basic training. The big thing is just eating consistent, not eating junk, kind of slowing your metabolism down, but feeding your body the right stuff to build muscle.
Okay.
And then consistent exercising, obviously. So for me, my brother was always more of the runt. I got like 30 pounds on my brother right now as it is.
Oh, wow.
But
So he kind of stayed the same weight then.
he gained weight, but when he got out of the service altogether, he lost a lot of weight. So, but for me,
That's that's not the norm though. Most guys lose. Most guys
oh,
gain
yeah,
the weight.
He's got to be
I
thankful
mean,
for that.
yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, graduation, and then so you have Wednesdays are always family day of graduation week.
Okay.
So we spent family day with my family. We went out, ate, and then went back. And for me, the biggest thing is I had to take a nap. So we went out, and I was just like, it's finally that moment where you can actually relax. You know, you're not going to get in trouble or caught doing anything. So just being able to take a nap was nice. So, and then we went back, and the next day was graduation. So we toured, we did graduation. We toured Fort Benning a little bit with the Infantry Museum there. And then we got to spend the rest of the day with the family again. Nothing real notable that I would say, but, and then they left. And then the next morning, Friday, is when all the AIT shippers went off to AIT. So we got back on a plane, which for me, basic training was only my second flight. So this is my third flight.
Okay.
Yep. And then went to Fort Sam Houston, which is in San Antonio, Texas. My first time ever going to Texas. If you haven't been out of the Ohio Valley, I highly recommend going to Texas.
Oh, it's beautiful
Just the
there.
sky, yeah, the sky's there, the open area. Like you don't realize how much of a valley we're in until you go somewhere flat and open.
Yeah. Well, before we move on to AIT, can I ask a question,
Yes.
please? All right. So I've heard in other branches, like the Marines, they have the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor, and they do a pinning ceremony, and I hear that's like a really emotional time. Air Force has a Airman's Coin ceremony that they do. Does the Army have something like that?
So for us, yeah, our phases are broken down. Basic training's broken down into the red, white, and blue phase.
Okay.
After every phase is kind of a big deal. You change colors, so to speak. Your guidons kind of get changed. But the culminating event for us at the time, I think they call it the Forge now. I don't remember it actually having a name before, but we did FTXs, field training exercises.
Right.
So our last FTX, all of them had some form of a ruck march. So rucking for us, hiking, wearing a bag, that type of stuff. So we got to march Sandhill. So I'm not infantry, but I did, have to go through the grueling aspects of Fort Benning. But we did a 10-mile ruck. It was supposed to lead into the night infiltration course, which is you'll see pictures, videos, people low crawling on the ground while rounds are being shot over their head. Just a disclaimer, it's not that dangerous. They're not shooting them anywhere near us. But for us, that ruck march, I went in the dead of summer. So I got to Fort Benning, Georgia. It was July 11th, and I didn't graduate till September 15th. So we were Heat Cat 5, as we called it, the entire time I was in basic. So we had to have our ankle blouses rolled. We had to have our cuffs rolled. So I actually kind of thought that was our uniform. Like, I never bloused my boots until I got to AIT. But during the last FTX, we were supposed to march to the night infiltration course. We get there, and we start having heat casualties. So we had one kid, he had like 105 body temperature, so the drill sergeants called a safety index, and they were like, we're done, we're busting you guys back, we're not going to do the night infiltration course. So I actually never got to do that. But yeah, they bust us back. They had these fire pits set up around the barracks, and they had us get into formation, and they came around, and that's when they pinned our, I think it was our U.S. Army caduce onto our lapel. So yeah, that was definitely a prideful moment, something that you've had a sense of accomplishment, especially when you started basic training. You're like, I don't know if I'll get through this. I don't know what to expect. And then here you are with everything behind you, and you're like, okay, the worst is behind me as far as basic training goes.
Right.
And you have a sense of accomplishment and achievement. And that's really, to me, the culmination of those invaluable skills that you'll learn in basic training. Take pride in yourself, do the hard work, earn your way through something. Everything has its reward. The things we're doing have their reward, and you got to take your moment, take that in, enjoy that, and then prepare for the next. So.
Okay. Well, yeah, so there is something like that then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
And it's a cool way to do it in the night campfires. Yeah, that's Army. That sounds like something you would do in the Army to me. That wouldn't be Air Force or Marine Corps. That's not, yeah. So, All right, let's move back on to AIT, Combat Medic School, right?
Yep.
All right, what's what's your job? What do you do?
Okay.
Are you in the hospitals every day, or what? Like, give me an idea.
The great thing, combat medic is one of the larger jobs. I think there's like 40,000 of us in the Army.
Wow.
But we do a lot of diverse things. So we can work in hospital settings, emergency room settings, just clinical settings on like TMCs, as we call it, troop medical centers.
Okay.
Or you can work with the units as line medics. So training is to prepare us for essentially any of those types of assignments.
Right.
A big part of our training is to get our National Registered EMTB certification. So I believe on the outside, it's typically a 6-month program or so. You do it in a classroom setting. You get your, you take your test, you get your certification. For us, on top of CPR, that's all done in 3 months. So for me, I was never the education-driven type of person. I didn't like sitting in a classroom. So the first 3 out of 4 months of our training was to get our National Registered EMTB certification. Sadly to say, it took me 3 tries to pass the test. It was rough. And I got it third. Like, I was sweating bullets because after 3 tries, they make you choose another job. Like, you failed to meet the standards. Yeah. So you become needs of the Army. They give you the option to recycle, where you can start again with a new class if it allots it, if the time and space allots, or they make you choose another job altogether. So for me, it was my brother passed first try. Here I am thinking we're going to be stationed together and doing stuff together, and then I'm stressing over, maybe I'm not even going to be a medic. But I passed the 3rd try. AIT was broken up differently, and it's still kind of like that today. For us being there 4 months, they had the different phases in which we earned different privileges. So we started off, we had a small reception, and then we got picked up for our AIT class, and it was kind of locked down again. We had civilian clothes, but you weren't allowed to wear them. You weren't allowed to go around on base. You had to be escorted everywhere you went. And then after the first week, because they did it by like 16-week increments. So each week was kind of something new was potentially coming. Or if you did bad, you were losing privileges. So we first, we started getting the right. We could wear civilian clothes once training was done for the day. And then you could go on base to like the PX or to the gym, but you had to be back for recall formation. And then you started getting more privileges. You could go off base. You could go to the Riverwalk in San Antonio. So, you make good friends in AIT, especially because that's when you can actually intermingle. For us, basic training was all males, so that's the only people we interacted with. So we got to AIT, and we had other people from like Fort Jackson, Fort Sill, Fort Leonard Wood, who had a mixed basic training. We didn't have a mixed basic training. So we didn't see females, and females didn't see us at all during basic.
Could females go to your basic, though?
Not at that time, because Fort Benning was all the combat MOSs. And some supplement. But they would, essentially, females would typically go, I think it was Sill and Jackson.
Okay.
So in AIT, that's typically your first time where you're actually intermingling as, an Army, because in the Army we have, men and women. So it became a lot of, at first everybody sharing their stories about what their basic training was like. And then, of course, and I remember the first time we sat down at AIT or in AIT chow hall to eat, you could tell everybody that was from Fort Benning because we all sat down, put our head down, and pretty much inhaled our food. The drill sergeants used to tell us we can eat it now and taste it later. So you would look around. I remember eating and looking around. You see people talking, and we're like, "Don't they know they're going to get in trouble? Like, what are they doing? They're gonna. And everybody's looking at us like we're prisoners who just escaped prison or something." But that was kind of the first introduction to me that, hey, I think we're in more of a relaxed MOS.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah,
that's pretty funny.
So, but then when you get to AIT and you get started, like I said, you start making friends and getting your groups of people, and you kind of see those who maybe left, who didn't leave their bad habits behind when they joined. Because the Army to me is a really good opportunity for a fresh start.
Okay,
you get a chance to, change your upbringing, so to speak. But you'll get those in AIT, and that's really, I always tell people, they give you just enough rope in AIT to string yourself up with it. So you start getting privileges, and some people learned, like, okay, I can't ruin this opportunity. But then you have others that are like, I'm going to go do what I want again, and then the drill sergeants find out, and now they're in trouble. So some people... Wait,
you still got drill sergeants in AIT?
We still have, yeah, we do now again. When I joined, we had drill sergeants in AIT. There was a brief time from I think it was 2008 to about 2015.
Okay.
Maybe 16, that they didn't have drill sergeants in AIT. They had just platoon sergeants. But yeah, I had drill sergeants there. And actually, probably the worst smoking I ever got was from a female drill sergeant in AIT. It was a rough one.
I've heard they're the meanest.
Oh yeah,
I've heard that they.
she actually shortly after I graduated, she won drill sergeant of the cycle for all of TRADOC. So she was a great drill sergeant though.
Well, yeah, but
yeah, those are the ones. If the ones that are good mentors, but at the same time, they can be the hardest, the hard ass drill sergeant if they need to be. So you need to fear them, but respect them.
Well, hold on. You said something that was kind of piquing my interest. You're calling drill sergeants mentors. I don't think that a lot of people would consider them mentors.
Well, that was my first. I had a drill sergeant Manzo in basic training, and he was a reason from the time I was in basic training I always wanted to be a drill sergeant. So this guy was a prior Ranger instructor.
Wow.
Samoan, big, stocky guy, very intimidating, but a quiet leader. And he came straight. We were his first basic training cycle. He had just graduated drill sergeant school, having come from being a Ranger instructor, and he wanted to lead soldiers fresh into the Army as opposed to getting Rangers later on. But this guy would be quiet, and he would tell you how things were without screaming at you. But the minute you messed up, he would damn near make you piss your pants. So,
well, it sounds like that is one of the most dedicated soldiers you can have. I mean, going from a Ranger to drill sergeant. I mean, Ranger school, being a Ranger itself. Was he a tab wearing, beret wearing Ranger, or was he just a?
He was.
I know there's a difference.
I can't. At that time, I don't remember necessarily looking at the combat side. He had combat experience, but being a Ranger instructor, I would imagine he probably did time with the Rangers.
Okay. But still, I mean, and that's an arduous job.
Oh, definitely.
It's not something that just anybody gets into and can hack it.
That's when you've made a commitment to the military.
Yeah, and it's a sacrifice. There's a lot of self-sacrifice in that. I would assume it's the same with drill sergeant as well.
And that's what I've always said. I like the opportunity. I love leading soldiers. That's something I miss about having, being a recruiter now, and that kind of I take that approach when I'm talking with individuals is the opportunity to mentor.
Right.
But as a drill sergeant versus a recruiter, especially, I mean, drill sergeants pretty much live in their job. They get a few maybe weeks, days off between cycles, but they're there 3 a.m. till 9, 10 p.m. Maybe get to see their family every day. Most probably don't. And they're committed. They care about their craft. They care about the soldiers that they're working with. And they're professionals. It's a grueling process just to become a drill sergeant. And then you spend years doing it. So it's definitely something I have the utmost respect for drill sergeants, especially, they're taking the civilians that we put into the military, and they're the ones that make them into soldiers.
Well, thank whoever for the drill sergeants out there. Yeah, really,
definitely.
So don't mean to interject too much there, but that's a really. Whoever's listening to this, I think, should know that drill sergeants are mentors. They're not there just to kill you and make your life miserable. It's definitely turning you into a new person.
Definitely.
So back to your story with the worst smoking of your life from the female drill sergeant.
So we had a couple instances in AIT. Like I said, the biggest stressor of it was learning the job, just because it's a mental stress on top of every day doing PT. We did have the weekends off in EIT, which was nice, but we did PT every morning, got breakfast, and we had to go to class until roughly 1700, and then come back, get ready for dinner chow, and then we had a few hours each night that we could maybe get on the payphone or go around, the base if we wanted to. But yeah, we had, one instance I remember. It was always bed check issues. So people wanting to sit in their bunks and giggle and laugh and bullshit.
Okay.
So our basic training barracks, we had one open bay with 30 bunks, so 15 bunks on each side, and everybody just lived in an open bay. AIT, we had smaller separate bays with maybe 15 people per bay. So it was a little more space, a little more comfortable. But the drill sergeants would come through every night and do bed check. And if you were up, not being respectful and doing stuff, it was essentially, okay, everybody on this floor downstairs now. So I remember we had one instance, because in Texas, it's like everything has sand. The grass has sand. The roads have sand. So I remember we had to form up. It was like 9 o'clock at night. We're standing down there. We're out there just going. We had like 10 seconds. We had to run from the formation area to the baseball field where we did PT. Didn't make it in time, so we had to run back, and it just kept doing cycles like that. And then they had water cans out. So we had to do water can and sandbag PT. Here you are. It's like 10:30 at night. We're finishing, and it's like, well, now how am I going to fall asleep? Because I'm, my heart's pounding, my adrenaline's going. So then the next day, it became a long day. The next day, I'll say that.
I'm sure. Sounds like you guys had a lot of fun playing in the sand.
playing, playing in the
sandboxes.
sand,
And,
little sand burn, so to speak. So
yeah, it sounds like a good time, like a
yeah.
day at the beach, right?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
So, how long was AIT again?
For me, it was 4 months
4
for my
months?
first one. So I'll tell a little story. I actually have 3 different MOSs right now.
Okay.
So, but yeah, for my first MOS, it was 4 months, 16 weeks. And the nice thing, I actually got a welcome letter. So not everybody, my understanding, gets a welcome letter. You might get assigned to a base, but you don't necessarily know what battalion you're going to go to. But I got a welcome letter about 2 months in or so, so I knew I was going to be going to Fort Drum, and I knew I was going to be going to the 214 Infantry Battalion up there. So the focus was graduation. Like I said, it was about December time frame when I passed. That was when the third opportunity was, and that was definitely, for me, that might have been the most proud I'd been at that point in my life, because that was a challenge. I didn't think I was going to graduate. I didn't think I was going to pass the course. And I was definitely bothered by it. But our senior drill sergeant at the time actually, and I thanked him for this afterwards because he didn't have to do it. He wasn't an instructor. So the drill sergeant's job was just our military side of things. And then we had civilian instructors that taught us the basic EMT course. So our senior drill sergeant took all of us that were struggling aside and tutored us on, tips and tricks about taking the NREMT test. And I know a lot of people on the civilian side who have problems passing it as well. So he took time out of his day, and I passed it that time. And it was definitely something. I looked at him, I was like, he didn't have to do that. But, I think
mentorship.
Exactly.
Mentorship, again.
And then, so I came home. We got Christmas Exodus. Came home for 2 weeks, got to see our family. That was the first time I got to come home.
Okay.
So that was about from time I left in July until Christmas. Came home for Christmas. I got hurt being home for Christmas. I got my foot run over by a car, actually. Yeah, so I kind of stressed because they always had this rumor that if you get hurt, you're going to get sued for damaging government property. So I always think that's something people were like, oh, you remember stressing over that? I was like, yeah, that's what I was told. So, yeah, I was stressing over it. So I go back.
I think anybody would. It's a natural reaction.
Yeah, so I go back to AIT, and I'm on crutches the last month I'm there. And the last phase for us was we had I can't remember what they call it, STX, and then an FTX. So a sticks training exercise and a field training exercise. So even though we're medics, a lot of people are like, oh, you're a pogue, you don't do anything. We still have to train as if we're going to be attached to a unit. So we spent a week actually out at Camp Bullis in San Antonio, which is the training grounds for Fort Sam. And the week out there was essentially running field hospital exercises. So as if the field hospital gets overrun, you have to have a security asset. We went out and did live fire ranges in case, obviously you were out on a convoy. Convoy as a medic, you still had to know how to protect yourself, that type of stuff. That's actually the sickest I ever got in my life. So I remember we were out in the field, no showers for that week. And they had showers for emergencies or if in case anybody needed to get showers, that time, and for the drill sergeant probably to get showers, but we needed to live the field life. But all through training too, and it's probably something I never really talked about, you have to have a battle buddy. So basic training, AIT, everywhere you go, you have to have a battle buddy. So what that is essentially somebody to take the blame with you. If you had a question for the drill sergeant, you had to go up to the drill sergeant with a battle buddy. If you got in trouble, you had to report to the drill sergeant with your battle buddy. So for me in AIT, my battle buddy was my brother because they broke us alphabetically. So we were battle buddies together. So we're at Camp Bullis for my FTX, and we go out like early that morning, like 6 a.m., 7 a.m. We drive out, and we were on the convoy lane for that day. So every day was a different thing. So we were away from the camp. We were out training, and I just remember I had no energy. It was like I had COVID before COVID was a thing. It was bad. And all day I'm out there. I just felt dehydrated. This is January in Texas, so it was still warm during the day, but it got really cold at night.
Right.
And like 8 o'clock rolls around. We're back, doing our recall formation. And I'm talking to my brother. I'm like, I need to talk to somebody. Like, I still feel horrible. And I go up to the drill sergeant, and he's like, why the hell did you wait all day? I was like, 'cause I didn't want to be a bitch. I wanted to do my job. Like, I'm here to train. And he took me, and they took my temperature. And I had 104-degree temperature. And then the drill sergeant's, so the medic there was like, you need to go to the hospital. And the drill sergeant's like, no, just take Tylenol, take a break. And he's like, this guy's being an asshole. You need to go to the hospital. And I was like, no, I'll try the Tylenol, I'll try the ibuprofen. And luckily, that broke the fever.
Good.
And, but yeah, that I don't wish that on anybody. Other
Miserable.
than when I got strep, that was probably the worst I've ever been sick in my life.
Okay.
But yeah, so that we finished that up. That wasn't too bad of a training exercise, especially coming from Fort Benning for basic. And then we got actually me and my brother both got approved for hometown recruiter assistance, HRAP.
Okay.
So with that, after we graduated AIT, we came back here and worked with our recruiters for 2 weeks before going to Fort Drum. So we both got assigned to Fort Drum through the buddy program again.
So the 2 weeks, did you guys go home at the same time?
Yep. So we were
that's
partnered
awesome.
together. Yep. So since we graduated together, we had to report for HRAP on the same day. So I think that was beneficial to the recruiters too. So they had 2 people to work with.
Yeah.
So it was nice being home, and our tasking for that was to go to the schools, kind of like how recruiters do. So go to the schools, just kind of be the face of the Army, talk about what we just did, so to speak.
Fresh off the boat, really.
Exactly. And that's really the time that now the community gets to see the change in you. Your teachers get to see it. The people that you maybe graduated with that you hadn't seen yet, they get to see the change in you. And in the hopes that they say, you know something, this guy did something, he's already better for it. I want to do that too.
Yeah, maybe it's for me.
Yeah.
I think that would have definitely made an impact on me if someone, maybe if I saw you or something like that. But yeah, so, okay, so now we're going to Fort Drum, right?
Yep.
You guys, did you enjoy the HRAP program, I guess?
I did. Well, yeah, I mean, we did. I would say it was not enough communication. It was just kind of, hey, go find people to talk to. So as a recruiter now, I remember that feeling, and we don't do that to our guys because we still have HRAP.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's stupid to just have somebody come home and say, hey, yeah, go find people. It's like, well, I've never done this before. I'm a young kid. I'm fresh in the Army. Do you really want to leave me by myself? So
who knows what kind of trouble you could have gotten into?
Yeah.
And not even knowing you were going to get into that kind of trouble. Right. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's kind of the problem.
Yep.
Okay. So we did the 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. A little bit crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Is your foot better?
Oh yeah, my foot's good. I got a scar on the side.
No, not now. I meant like then.
Oh,
now you're walking just fine.
Yeah, I got disability now and all that stuff. No, but no, it healed up pretty good. It was mainly just gash, just kind of flesh wounds.
Oh,
so
okay.
So yeah, it just needed time to heal up on its own.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if like you'd gone through like now you're going to first base on crutches and
no, I'm good.
Broken and stuff. So okay, so we head to Fort Drum. What's our first duty station like? How did we get there? Do we drive? Do we fly? What do we do?
So we drove up. That's the one thing, and I hear rumors it's still out there. I can never get a straight answer, but we got a request list when I was in, I think, basic. And the drill sergeant said, they're going to start looking for assignments, so you need to submit this list, list your top 5, what we call CONUS, which means stateside, or OCONUS. You had to list your top 3 OCONUS assignments, which is overseas. So a lot of people think if you say I'm going to get stationed overseas, that means combat. But we have, bases that you go live at, Germany, Italy, Japan, South Korea, and many other places, Hawaii, Alaska, they're considered overseas too. So you list the top 5 stateside, top 3 overseas. And for me, I'd asked the drill sergeants, well, what's close to Ohio? And the drill sergeant said, well, we got a base in New York, so I put New York as my number 1.
Okay. And
coincidentally, that's what I got. So a lot of people, if you talk to them, they will cut off their right arm before they'll volunteer to go to Fort Drum. And the reasoning behind that is because the cold. The cold, the snow, this is upstate New York. So this is about 8 hours from here, 8.5 or so. North of Buffalo, north of Albany.
So you're almost to Canada.
Oh, yeah, you're 30 minutes from Canada.
Okay.
Far north. Watertown, New York, that's the closest town. So look that up and see where it's at. But average snow, I think when I was in Iraq, because we got there February 10th. And I remember we drove up her. So my mom, my sister, me, and my brother drove up her. My mom brought her car back. We got signed in. There was a holdover barracks we had to stay in. I kind of looked at it like a puppy pound, because we're sitting in the holdover barracks, and it's like the next morning, all these sponsors are showing up, and they're calling off names. They're like, "I'll take you, you, and you. Let's go."
Is it like AA sponsors?
No. Well, they're sponsors as in like. They reach out to you. They say, "Hey, I'm going to be your sponsor. Fort Drum is where you're assigned."
People who are already stationed there and whatnot.
Stationed there.
Okay.
Yep. That's just to make sure, because you got to understand, even a soldier who's in the military, if you haven't been to a base, it may be a lot different than where you may have been. But especially if you're brand new to the Army, you don't know what a military base is like at all. So their job is to make sure that you know where to go, when to be, where you need to be, and to be the point of contact when you get there.
Okay.
So for us, it was the next morning. We signed in like 11 at night, stayed in the holdover barracks, and then the next morning our sponsor came. So I had a welcome letter, which means I was already assigned to go to that battalion. So when they showed up, they're like, oh, there's 2 of you, we'll just take both of you. So my brother actually inadvertently wasn't supposed to be necessarily in the same battalion as me. And because we were medics, we were put in the same company. He was just guaranteed he would go to drum. So it was kind of nice that we, they saw there was 2. So like I said, it's kind of like a pound. They were like, oh, well, I want 2 of you, so I'm going to take both of you. So a lot of us from my AIT actually went to Fort Drum. I think 7 of my graduating classmates went to my battalion together. So there was a lot of people, and I'm still in contact with them today, and I graduated basic, almost 16 years ago. And so there's still a lot of buddies of mine that I went to basic with, AIT with, drum with, Iraq with, and they're still in the Army today. So it's definitely, we always make the saying, it's a small Army, small military. And it's definitely nice, seeing other people's careers and how they've changed and blossomed, so to speak. But for us, when I got picked up, it was earlier in the morning, and they shuttled us from the holdover barracks to our battalion to get signed in at the battalion. And I remember watching, because people were still doing PT, and this is February in New York, so there's feet of snow out there. And there's people, we were wearing these baklavas, which are like face masks, big black face masks. And they're wearing these, what we call Mickey Mouse boots, which are big rubber white boots.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm asking the sponsor, I'm like, is that what we really do PT in this? They're like, yeah, you do PT in this. I'm like, what did I get myself into? Because I hate the cold. I absolutely hate the cold.
So this is the second time in the Army you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, oh yeah.
What have I done?
Well, the Army has a good way. Even 16 years in, there's points where you look back, you're like, what did I sign up for? But as a joke, it's like, I volunteered for this. It is what it is. So, but it's the funny stories, and that's what I tell people. Life is about your experiences. It's about the funny stories you can tell, the hard life lessons you can learn. I don't want a boring life. I don't think many of us want a boring life.
Well, on a side note then, I'm assuming at this point, you can look back on all this stuff. No matter how hard it was, you can laugh at it.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
I can laugh at you got to be able to laugh at yourself, and that's a big difference.
I mean, I'm sure deployments are now a lot of this stuff. I mean, I know there's hard stuff on deployments, but I'm sure deployments, it can be funny. I mean, some of the stupid stuff that goes on there,
100%.
and we'll get there.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Yeah, I'm just kind of bringing up that, man, feet of snow though.
Oh yeah, feet.
Oh
feet of
God.
Snow. So we used to do, because I was up for 4 years or so. Used to do medic training, and that sometimes we were doing harder training than a lot of the other guys, and that's part of why they liked us, being infantry medics. I always found we had to train harder.
Well, let me ask you a question. Were you stationed in the hospital, or are you with the guys?
I was a line medic my time up there, so I was actually assigned, when I first got there, I was assigned to the infantry company that I was a part of, to the platoon. So I was with them 24/7. I did PT with them. If they had inspections, I was in inspections with them. And that was essentially from day one when I got there. So when I got assigned there, it was on a Friday. I don't remember if it was a holiday or a ball or something coming up, but everybody was kind of leaving for the day, even early on. So they were like, yeah, we'll get you your barracks. You guys are done for the day. We got a ball coming up, so there's nothing. So I get there, and I get assigned to it's HHC company, so headquarters company. And that's where they put the support assets. So our mortarmen, our medics, our commo, they're all assigned to headquarters. And then from there, the 4 infantry companies either get reassigned those personnel, or they draw from that company to use those personnel. Okay. So all the medics, there was like 30 of us in the battalion. All the medics were part of HHC. So I got assigned there, and then I got my barracks room. So because we're all, tight-knit and you work where you live, essentially, I got assigned to an infantryman's room as his roommate. So I get there, and nobody in the barracks knew me yet, and I'm going up to my room to get in. Apparently, it was a senior corporal, so senior E4, team leader in the infantry was my roommate. But I go, it's late, it's getting late, he's nowhere to be found, and I go into the room, and I'm like, well, I don't know where I'm going to stay. Like, this guy had been living in the room by himself for a while, so he kind of took up the whole room. And I was like, well, shit, I don't have a blanket. I don't have anything. I was like, I'm tired. I'm just going to kind of rack out. And then I get woken up in the middle of the night to these guys in my room. Apparently it was some of the infantry privates, thinking I was a new infantryman. So if you know anything about infantrymen, they fuck with each other pretty frequently, pretty roughly, especially if you're new. You got to get indoctrinated. You got to get brought into the group. So these guys are standing there like, what are you doing in this room? Who are you? What's your name? Where you signed? And they were like, I thought they were going to beat the shit out of me.
Okay.
And so I'm like, I'm a medic, and immediately they're like, okay, let's go play video games. So they like forced me out of my room to go into their room to play these video games with them. And that's why I'm like, oh, I think I'm safe here. I think they like me because I'm a medic, and that's something that really the medic infantry relationship. If you've never worked with infantry or medics, that's a brotherhood. It really is.
I would hope so.
If
They
you're-
kind of need you.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you're
If you're a
important.
good medic, yeah. So those are probably the majority of the guys I still keep in contact with today are the infantrymen that I worked with.
Oh, that's good.
So couple of the medics. But so yeah, we get our rooms, and a couple of the medics let us come over for the weekends because a couple of the medics lived off base together. So the new guys, we kind of got introduced, and so to speak, and then we were getting ready for training. So our battalion was preparing for what's called NTC, which is National Training Centers and Deployment Training Cycle. So we were going to go do a month of training in Fort Irwin, California. So that was kind of, I just got to drum, got my gear issued, and then we were packing up to head off to California for a month. And that's when I got assigned to my platoon. So they were like, you're going to be a Delta Company 3rd Platoon medic. You're their medic. So I got introduced to my senior line medic. So he was my go-to guy for that company as far as the medics go. So each platoon would have a medic, and then the company would have a senior line medic who was in charge of the medics. So then the 3rd Platoon was standing up. Delta Company was a new company. The company the battalion had just had a deployment, I think 03, 04, and I got there early 06. So they were cycling to get ready again at the time, and I still think it's the case. 2nd Brigade, 10th Mountain Division is the most deployed brigade in the Army. So that was the cycle we were on at the time. We were, a year deployed, a year home, year deployed, year home. And I think they're probably up there. I think it's like 2nd Brigade, 10th Mountain Division, and 2nd Brigade, 101st are two of the most frequently deployed. And that's just because of their tempo. They're light infantry, which means they're mobilized. They're always on the go, always training. So yeah, we went to Fort Irwin, though. That's when I got to work alongside my platoon. They got to know me as a medic. We kind of a lot of new privates, so that helped out. I didn't get there as the only young private. There was a lot of new infantry privates. And it was a nice chance for me to be tested. So I was the only, as a line medic, you have to be knowledgeable. You have to be self-reliable, self-sufficient to do your job for these guys. You're the subject matter expert when it comes to medicine for these guys. And it was a cool opportunity.
And you're what, like 18 years, 19 years
nope,
old?
I was 18 at the time. Yeah.
That's a lot of responsibility.
Oh yeah, and that's something I do. I liked it, and I'm very content with the choice I made because it forced me to be responsible for myself.
I'm not saying that you couldn't handle it. I just, for those out there listening,
Oh yeah.
that's A, it's got to be a shock.
Mm-hmm.
And B, I mean, you're a young kid essentially, and you're responsible for these men.
Oh yeah.
From the lowest, I'm assuming from the lowest ranking to the most senior.
Yep. And that's something I do like because my platoon sergeant, Sergeant Hayner, at the time, which I'll get into the story a little bit later on about him, but him and my PL is now, I think, Major Hastings, Captain Hastings. They both showed me respect from the day I got there. Like, you're the medic, you're the guy to go to, but if you need anything, because my job was to go to them. They were the ones kind of in charge of me for the line, for the platoon. So I wouldn't say I got favoritism because I wasn't a shitbag as we use the term. But I earned their respect, I feel like, and I earned my platoon's respect. And NTC was a nice test for me for that. I'm glad I got to do it early. So that way, as soon as I got to my platoon, they got to know me and trust me because we knew we were deploying. So I needed their trust before we went and did that.
Yeah, definitely.
But for me, growing up, that was my biggest thing. I always admitted that I was lazy. I didn't take responsibility. I didn't carry my weight, so to speak. So being a medic was different. I didn't have another medic beside me to rely on necessarily. So being a line medic, I had to prove that I could carry my weight plus learn their job and do their job.
Sounds like you stepped up to the plate, though.
Yeah, you have to. The infantry with their medics, I've seen medics show up and they are lazy. They are, oh, I'm a medic, I don't need to do that. The infantry unit will get rid of you. You will go back to an aid station. And nobody wants to work in an aid station. If you work out in the infantry, you get to do the exciting stuff. You get the respect. You get the perks.
You're one of the guys.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, NTC was a fun experience. I realized how cold the desert can get. Aside from that, I wouldn't really say too much really happened. And then Coming back, we were gearing towards deployment. So it was about March, mid-March, late March or so that we got back to Fort Drum. So we get our vacation every year. We get 30 days a year. So typically, pre-deployment, you'll take 2 weeks. Christmas time, you'll take 2 weeks. So we were gearing towards vacation. But shortly before that, we got word that air assault was going to become available, air assault school. So
now, what does that do? What do you do as an air assaultman?
So
Or
really nothing.
am I saying that right?
Well,
As
just
an air assaultman?
air assault qualified.
Okay.
Really nothing for the most part. I mean, I'm not going to say it's the same case for everybody.
I was going to say, I mean, millions are watching. You know this. I mean, the whole 148 of our million followers that we don't have.
But no, air assault. Same with airborne. I mean, if you go to airborne school, you get to wear the badge. But a lot of airborne guys in the Army aren't jumping out of airplanes. Okay. So the difference is we don't have air assault units like we do airborne units. So you don't just have people out there doing air assault operations.
Well, what do you do as an with an air assault qualification? Like, what is it?
Well, typically you can work along with helicopters. You're reliable or relied on within a unit to know more of like sling loading operations. That's where our air assault school really falls in, is being able to work with loading up a helicopter and helping it take off to carry a load, whatever that case might be. Different than like fast roping or combat missions. Because I did do a couple air assault missions in Iraq, but it wasn't any sling loading. It was just us moving in on a helicopter, getting out, going and doing a raid. But we didn't. I never used my skills from air assault school in any kind of practical sense.
Okay.
For the Army though, for the most part, it's a test. It's a hard school. A lot of people will say it's 10 of the hardest days in the Army. If you do it.
Well, let me ask you this: are you ever planning on using it now that you're out, or once you're out as a veteran?
No, it's nothing that's going to get me anything. Okay. I'm medical. I like medical.
I'm just a little bit of banter, a little bit of joking back and forth, but so.
But for that, so I heard through headquarters and headquarters company that air assault slots were coming down. So to go to these schools, you have to have the slots. The unit has to have slots to send soldiers. So I got kind of the early bird word on slots coming down. But it was going to be divvied up amongst the different companies. And I knew headquarters was probably going to give it to one of their senior medics who, knew how to kiss some ass, so to speak. So I talked to my infantry platoon sergeant, Sergeant Hayner, and I was like, I heard there's air assault slots coming down. I want the challenge. Is there any way I might be able to get one of those slots? He's like, well, I haven't heard anything, but I'll ask around. I'll let you know. And so this kind of pissed some of my buddies off. So if they hear this, then yes, I do remember you guys were pissed off. So when the slots were awarded, my PL came to me, Captain Hastings, and he said, your PT is better than everybody's. You do PT with us every day, and you're kicking these guys' asses. He's like, you want the air assault slot? We want to send you. I was like, yes, I want to try it. I want to do it. And everybody was pissed. They're like, you're the medic. We're the infantry. It should be an infantry slot. So, but I went, and that was, for me, that was the challenge. Because I remember in basic asking the drill sergeants about the different schools and the different badges, and they explained air assault. And I remember saying then, I was like, that's the one I don't want to do. That one sounds like it's going to be rough. So the fact that I got the slot and was able to try it, I was like, I want to see how far I can test myself. So I got to go. It was right after leave. We came back. It was about a month before we were deploying. I went to air assault school for 2 weeks. So air assault school for us is you focus primarily on helicopter operations. So you're learning about helicopters. So the first couple days is testing, like book testing. But to even be a candidate, you have to go through an inspection on day 0. So day 0, you show up. There was like 300 of us that showed up to the light fighter school up at Fort Drum. It's like 7 o'clock in the morning. We had all our gear, and you had to go through a layout. So they gave you a packing list ahead of time. And if you went through the layout and they found a deficiency, something was missing, you were dropped. You weren't going to be a candidate. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's a rough school to even get into. They go down to every little thing. If they say they want 2 dog tags and you have a dog tag and you're missing the small chain on it, you're kicked out. So I remember a buddy of mine.
That seems like a waste of money. I mean,
well, it's a waste. It saves money to not, because they got to weed through people.
Okay.
So yeah, they got to weed through people. So sending somebody, I mean, you're already a paid soldier. Most of us were already stationed on Fort Drum. So really, it's just.
Oh, that's where the school is.
Yeah,
anyways?
the school is on Fort Drum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I was really able to get it, because any schools the Army has to send you to, you're gonna go through a grueling process before they allot the money to send you. So being the school was on Fort Drum, they send more people because they're only going to take about 150 into the school. So you'll have 300 show up as candidates, and then they'll weed through the process. So I know a buddy of mine, he had one of the headquarters company slots. He showed up and he was missing a glove insert, which is like a cotton mitten that goes under your work glove. Kicked out. So I was like, man, I hope I make it through. So I got through. I got selected day 0. So then from day 0, you go do the obstacle course. And I remember prep-wise, my PL, Captain Hastings, he kept training me on rope climbing. So I was thinking, rope climbing is going to be tough. Like, these guys are talking about rope climbing left and right. So the obstacle course has a rope climb, 10 feet.
Okay.
It's the simplest thing in the world. I was like, you guys did all this stressing me out about rope climbing for me to have one 10-foot rope climb. But we got through the obstacle course. It was a lot of fun. And for me, heights is the worst. I'm 5'6" on a good day. Our ladder that we do, I hate it in basic training. I hated it at air assault school. The ladder rungs get further apart or they close together as you climb, but they start off at like 5.5 feet apart.
Oh.
So you got to climb this giant wood ladder. The wood is like, I don't know if it's from weather or whatever the case is, but it's got a slippery kind of texture to it anyway. So I hate heights, not necessarily the falling, but the sudden impact is kind of what I fear. So
it's a good place to be afraid of.
So yeah, I remember doing that. That was the worst obstacle for me, was the ladder, just because the heights aspect.
Right.
And then after that, the obstacle course we got through, and then we started. So day 1, you were a candidate. So then it's 2 full weeks, so 10 days of training. You start off 3 days of in class, learning about helicopters, getting tested. And then you move into, you have a ruck march. So you start with a 4-mile ruck, and then week 2, you'll do a 6-mile ruck, and then the last day you did a 12-mile ruck. Again, being short, being new to the Army, rucking was one of my weakest points. So I actually failed the 4 and the 6-mile ruck.
Oh,
you had to do them. You have to do it. All the gear was like 45 pounds. You have to do a 4-mile ruck. I think it was in an hour. Not even an hour. I think maybe an hour.
So when you ruck, are you allowed to, just for those who don't know, can you run?
You can run.
You can run.
But you're in boots. You're in boots, your uniform, you're wearing your ruck. We had our helmet on, and we had what we call our FLC, or flick. So front load carrier, that's the vest we carry that carries our canteens and our ammo pouches and things like that.
But running would be
running
fun.
If you can endure it. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be difficult.
Yeah. Being short-legged, and then the course we used was all gravel. So it was 2 miles out, 2 miles back. You had to do that in an hour. I missed it by like a minute or something.
That sucks.
Yeah, and then the 6-mile was an hour and a half, and then the 12-mile was 3 hours. The 12-miler was required. You had to pass the 12-miler to graduate. But for me, I got it in my head. I was like, I'm not going to make this anyway. Because and that's the big thing. I was defeated before I began. I kept telling myself, I was like, I don't know why I keep pushing myself. Something's going to come up. I'm going to fail this. But it came down for me to the last day, and I had passed everything. So the last thing standing in my way was the 12-mile ruck. And I had already failed the 4 and the 6. I just sucked at rucking. I hadn't gotten my stride down. I hadn't gotten my endurance down. But I told myself, and again, this is midsummer, so it was pretty hot. We started the 12-mile ruck, and I remember I was with our youngest guy, because he had to wear these wings, because they always pick the youngest guy, and he has to wear these wings and keep them safe and all this stuff. And so I was with him. He was a short guy, too. And I had it in my head. I was like, you know something? I'm not going to let this very last thing be the reason I don't get my wings, because I never thought in my career I would earn my air assault wings anyway. So I told myself, I was like, I'll pass out. I'll do whatever I have to do. I'll push myself as hard as I have to get, my air assault wings. And I come back in, I had 10 minutes left. I was like,
holy crap.
Yeah. I was like,
so you killed it.
I pushed myself as hard as I could. And I was just, that was a problem. For me, that, again, little accomplishments along the way, that really taught me that go for the hard stuff. Challenge yourself.
Well, listen, let me interject here. I mean, from what I hear so far of your story, it's a story of small failures leading to really great successes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing that you can just continue to push yourself, and when it really counts and it really matters, which I think is going to be a great aspect of a good medic. Man, that's awesome.
I was going to say, that's what I tell people too. You got to learn from your failures. And that's the advice I give people in basic. When you're going to basic training, you're going to make mistakes. The drill sergeants are going to yell at you. When you make the same mistake 2 or 3 times, that's when it becomes a problem. That's when it becomes habit. So,
man, that's still Congratulations on that.
Oh,
That's an awesome story.
Oh yeah. But again, so I got my wings, and the cool thing, and that's something I like because I'm still good buddies with the other guy I went with. He's actually a first sergeant now. Great thing about infantry, I think this guy's 13 years in. He's a first sergeant, 15 years in, a first sergeant.
Wow.
So, but he's, I think he's still in the drill field. So he's a first sergeant at a drill sergeant unit. But he went to air assault with me. There was 4 of us from Delta Company. So 3 infantrymen and myself. 2 of us graduated and got our wings. So that's why I said, I told my guys when I got back, I know you guys were upset I went, but I didn't waste it. I didn't, waste the opportunity. Because you had 2 infantrymen that went and they failed. So for me, though, like I said, that really instilled. It was a nice boost for me prior to deploying. So I got my wings. We got back to the unit, and I had 2 weeks before we deployed. So then that was the gear again, getting ready. We knew at the time we would probably be deployed for 15 months because that was the tempo anyway. But it was on paper at the point it was still going to be a 12-month deployment. So that was our gear our focus, getting all the gear issued. I joined with just one small little thing too. I joined with BDUs, the old green uniform.
Yep.
So we were getting our new uniforms.
OCPs or no,
ACUs.
No, ACUs. Yeah.
Worst uniform. I don't know what the Army was thinking.
Well, we all ended up going on that trend because of you guys.
Yeah. And then we geared up. We had a quick family day. So my mom and my sisters, everybody come up. We had a weekend little cookout. And then Monday come around and we started packing up and heading to the airstrip to head overseas.
So when you guys deploy, you fly commercial, you fly...
So I guess it's different for every base. I don't know if we've universalized it, but Fort Drum had their own commercial airline that they brought a civilian chartered plane in, and we flew civilian to Ireland. I was only there a few hours, just long enough to refuel the plane. But I always tell my wife I've at least been to Ireland because that's one thing. And
was it Shannon by chance?
I couldn't tell you. I
Okay.
can't remember. I think we were literally just in the airport the whole time. And then refueled, flew to, I think it was Budapest, and then from there to Kuwait.
Well, back to Ireland. Did you at least get a nice Guinness from Ireland?
No. I was 19 at the time.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. I didn't turn 21 until I was almost out of the Army the first time. So,
wow,
yeah.
wow.
And I promise, I never drank.
Oh, I know you didn't. No one would even question you on that. Kuwait. What base in Kuwait?
Buehring.
Never heard of it.
Buehring. Behring, something like that, I think.
Army base, Air Force base?
I couldn't tell you, really. Probably Air Force. I think most of the bases we stopped at, and probably Air Force.
Oh, okay.
We were essentially there for acclimation. That's the only reason we stopped. So literally...
How long?
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
2 miserable weeks.
Okay.
So the idea was, because again, we were leaving New York, United States, midsummer, to a Middle Eastern country where the heat is ungodly in pretty much late summer. So they knew it was going to be a shock. So when we got to Kuwait, we had these tents. I couldn't even tell you how many people tent, probably 200-man tent. And the whole focus was you guys need to slowly start getting used to the heat. So it was really sit around, drink water, kind of get outside, walk around a little bit, get used to it. And then, week 1 was over. It was, hey, we're going to go out with some of our gear on. We're going to walk around, make sure you tolerate it. So it became reliable on me to watch people, to make sure everybody was drinking water, make sure they, I had IVs ready in case somebody went down and they needed an IV. But like I said, I was saying earlier too, when we landed in Kuwait, I think it was 12 o'clock at night, and I got off the plane. And I remember thinking, I was like, the jet engine has to still be on. I got this hot air right in my face. And they're like, no, the plane is off. They're like, how hot do you think it is? I was like, it's got to be 110 degrees. They're like, yeah, it's about 110 degrees. I was like, oh my God, it's midnight and it's 110 degrees out. Oh, excuse me. But Kuwait was dry, which was nice. So Kuwait had a dry heat. So it was very much in your face, but it wasn't, I feel like it wasn't the heat that'll kill you as quickly.
The humidity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been awful.
So, but, Kuwait was kind of nice, sit around. We had an MWR there, so we got to go, got to go work out.
What's an MWR?
Morale, Welfare, Recreation. So it's, recreational centers that they have set up, essentially for soldier rec time, soldier time, downtime. Watched a lot of movies there. They had a little movie theater, and so it was nice to kind of redirect your focus, because that's a lot of people when they first get deployed. It's like a tough pill to swallow because coming home is down the road, as opposed to,
Yeah.
getting in the swing of things. You don't know what your deployment's going to be like. You don't know where your deployment necessarily is exactly going to be. So in transition like that, it's nice to have opportunities to sit down, kind of, remember home, watch movies, play video games, that type of stuff. And
it's going to be a long 12, 15 months.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it's not like you're not on a pleasure cruise, I'm assuming.
No. So, but then, the 2 weeks started gearing because it was always about waiting for flights. So we had to wait till we could get chartered through the Air Force for transportation into Iraq. So we kept getting last minute words like, okay, we'll be mobbing out at this point, get pushed back a little bit. And then word finally come down. So then we essentially packed up, cleared the tents, got all our gear, and headed to the airstrip to head to Iraq. So.
Okay. So we're heading into Iraq. Where were you at in Iraq?
Baghdad. So south of Baghdad. At the time, which is still known as it today, it's referred to as the Triangle of Death, which I know sounds horrible. But it's Mahmudiyya, Lutafiyya, and Yusufiyya were the three major cities. And they just geographically made a triangle southeast of Baghdad.
Okay. So we're in the Triangle of Death. We've shown up. What do we do?
So landing there, we all thought we were going to be in a desert. Everybody talks Iraq, Middle East. They just imagine one big desert. And we get there, and it's green and humid. And elephant, like we were replacing the 101st. So that was our, typically our rotation was 101st was there. We replaced them. They came back, replaced us. But they were there. So when we first got there, we were on Camp Stryker, or FOB Stryker, which was part of Camp Liberty. So FOB Stryker at the time was still kind of getting built back up. They were really trying to make it nicer at the time. They had a lot of moon dust. So instead of like gravel roads and stuff like that, I mean, it's literally like powder, like fine powder.
Mm-hmm.
And they would have trucks go around just watering the roads so they would stay hard and drivable. And then they, as the months went on, they would pave some of the roads and build the chow halls up. But for the most part, it was a nice kind of smaller FOB, but that was our main base.
What's FOB? Explain.
FOB, forward operating base.
Okay.
So you got your camps, and then FOB is just kind of a catch-all term when it's not a majorly occupied or massive base or camp.
How many guys would you say were at your FOB? I mean, was it just you, or how much support?
No, it was many units. It was our whole battalion to start, and then other units on top of it. So it's really hard to put a number. But
just trying to get a feel for, I mean, is it like a small group of guys, or is it like a
pretty
large
pretty
operation?
Large. It was large. It was our main hub for the deployment for the whole battalion.
Okay.
From there, other people would get pushed to different areas, but we had the majority of the BIOP area, Baghdad International Airport, and then our sister battalion, 431, they're Polar Bears. They're another battalion out of Fort Drum, but they took over the Mahmudiyya area, which Mahmudiyya was really bad. So there's a book I do recommend, None Left Behind. If you guys read it, it's a book about the activities going on during my deployment.
Okay.
But they focus on the events of the 431 Infantry Battalion. So if you're familiar with the Black Hawk Down story with Sergeant Eversman, First Sergeant Eversman was a first sergeant when I was at Fort Drum for 431. So he was part of the Black Hawk Down story, which was, our interactions during Somalia back in the 90s.
Right. So he was
there with the Rangers. He was still in.
Wow.
A friend of mine from AIT was his medic, and I'll share a story for maybe off camera. But anyway, he was with 431 though. He was their Alpha Company, I believe, first sergeant during that deployment. And it just, if you read the book, especially, it gets into a lot of the details. But they had a rough deployment, and if anybody remembers, you may remember, we call it a Dust One incident. So duty status, whereabouts unknown. So a kidnapping event took place in 2007 while we were over there, and it was the 431 soldiers that were involved with that. But that affected 431. So they had, I think it was the southeastmost tip of our area, but it was more of an urban kind of what you would think Fallujah and whatnot.
Yeah.
Ours was more rural. The area we covered was like Sadr. It was Sadr al-Yusufiyya, something like that was maybe the city name. But we had more urban areas, farmlands, as opposed to them. They had the city.
Those can be equally as dangerous, though, can't
Oh
they?
yeah, we had a lot of IED issues where was our major concerns. At the time, we dealt with. I mean, we operated primarily with Humvees. We didn't
Right.
have the MRAPs yet. We didn't, use strikers or anything. We were a light infantry unit, so light infantry. We were dismounted a lot. Being a medic, I was dismounted every time we were dismounted because
Right.
they needed medical assets. So our main operation when we first got there, taking over for 101, was route security and population engagements and cache searches. So to make sure people aren't hiding things and attacking us. So the first route that we took over, I can't remember, I think it was Route Mustang maybe, had no activity. So we're like, we're not doing anything here. We're gonna redirect and cover Route Caprice and some of the other ones. Caprice was the big one that we covered, and that's why that one kind of stands out to me versus some of the other ones. But so we'd go out. We constantly changed up our rotation. So sometimes we would do like 24 on, 24 off. We'd do that for a couple weeks, and then we mixed it up because we would alternate the four platoons platoons in Delta Company. So this was Delta Company's mission. That was my focus. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, I never really interacted with much. They had their own assignment. I didn't see many of those guys the whole deployment. Delta Company, our biggest area was the area that we covered. So we rotated with the four platoons on the route security missions, the population engagements, and then other things that may come down over the course of the deployment.
So let me ask you a question about, route security and population engagement. You're not just there to kick indoors.
No.
You're there to win the hearts and minds.
Exactly.
As
That
well.
was the biggest part of what we did. Unless we had intel or something crazy was going on, we weren't actively engaging anything. We weren't trying to be aggressive. Our biggest concerns, because we dealt with multiple terrorist groups while we were over there. We had the Al Qaeda, obviously, were pretty big. We had one group, and they talk about it in the book as well too. They had many different names during our time there. I think they started off being known as the 1920s Revolutionary Brigade, but they are essentially another group of Sunni and Shiite terrorists.
Right.
But the Al Qaeda didn't care who you were, American, civilian, local national, or another terrorist group. They would target you.
Well, the reason I brought that up is I don't want people to think that, especially in our day and age, and with Vietnam ending the way it ended and the way that everyone was treated when they came back.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we're over there just, not we. I mean, you
Mhm.
were over there for that. You're not over there just kicking indoors and terrorizing people, terrorizing the terrorists or the prospective terrorist. You're over there to do a good thing and provide a service not only to your soldiers, but to the people of the towns.
Our focus was...
Is that wrong?
No, 100%.
Okay.
Our focus, and this is something, a friend of mine always shares this to Facebook, and I really enjoy it when I do see it. Our focus was to help those locals take back their property.
Right.
And our area, when we left, was deemed to have done that. And there has been, every so many years, we get, there's new news postings or whatnot saying that the Triangle of Death is still stable. The people, when we left and we turned their land back over to them, they've been able to sustain that since we left.
Which has to give you such an essential sense of accomplishment and, pride that you were a part of that mission. I mean,
most definitely.
So yeah, I don't want to, obviously what you did was great, I don't want anyone to think anything, but I also don't want people to think that we're over there trying to murder people.
No, most definitely not.
So,
so we did, like I said, we rotated. I think it really come down to we worked 6 days and we had a 2-day refit, or what we call it. So 2 days of downtime back on FOB, or Camp Striker. And then we'd be out for about 5 days at a time, 6 days at a time. So the biggest focus was route security. So we'd set up primarily on Route Caprice. So we'd set up we had 4 Humvees. We'd set up pretty much around or on different, key intersections that we knew of to be able to watch the road. That was our focus. Because on the east side of our objective was a hotbed area. On the west side was a lot of rural families, people that we were trying to keep the separation so that we weren't dealing with civilian casualties. And that was a lot of the casualties I treated were inadvertent farmers running over IEDs, family members getting shot in crossfire and things. So that's a lot of times I would get called up, would be to help locals who had some kind of catastrophic injury. But we did that for quite a while. The surge, so I was over there when the surge took off. We got there August or so, and then March, I believe, '07. So I came home on leave. So we got 2 weeks leave mid deployment. I lucked out because for me it was like right in the middle of the deployment, and we worked it out that my brother would come home at the same time.
That's cool.
So my brother come home like 2 days before I did, and then I come home. We spent home, our leave at home, and I always make the joke because that's when I actually started talking to my wife and her family, because I actually graduated with my wife's sister. So we came home, and my brother, we stayed good friends with my wife's sister, and my brother had set it up that we'd all go hang out. And I came home, I was real jet lagged, and we went to my wife's parents' house. And that's the first time I met my father-in-law. And I just remember my wife was a senior at that time. And he was, giving us her senior pictures. And I was always joking. I was like, your dad was trying to set you up with me before you ever tried to.
That's awesome.
And so then, I hung out. I kind of slept the whole time I was there. Like I said, I was exhausted.
Yeah.
And then, our 2 weeks was up. We went back to Iraq. And my wife started emailing me on MySpace, back when MySpace was the thing.
Hey.
And,
do you have a good MySpace song?
I can't even remember. But, so that's, I had known my wife since elementary school, but we never really talked. And, going back overseas, she kind of just reached out to me. So she stalked me, so to speak. And
hey,
so been together. June will be 10 years married and 14 years together. So,
well, congratulations on that. That's awesome. That's a really cool, way to meet and everything.
Oh, yeah. So
gave you someone to talk to while you're over there.
Definitely.
That wasn't a soldier.
Yeah. She helped, give me communication, because I hated calling home. When you call home over there, it's like a 15-second delay, and your different time zone is like 10 8-hour difference somewhere in there. So I'd always have to call weird hours, and there's certain things I couldn't talk about, or I didn't want to bring up, or when you call home and you got people busy back here. And I told somebody the other day this too. When you're gone, life keeps going for everybody else but you. For you, you come home and life stood still, but everybody else is older and life has happened. Bad things happen, good things happen. And it's kind of something you missed out on. So that's part of the sacrifice people don't realize. I have some good friends, married couple, both majors. And I got to see them last weekend. We were in the reserve together. And that's something I was talking about. They just come back. It's the first time I got to see them since they come back from Iraq.
Yeah.
And that's what they said too. It's like they missed COVID here, but they had to deal with it, overseas. But it's just them adjusting and stuff, and I can see the change in them. They're a little different, and they understand it more. When you're in the service and you never deployed, you don't understand the service completely, in my opinion.
No, I agree completely. And it's I always thought that bases being deployed was kind of like having a prison sentence, a short prison sentence. So I don't know. That's how I feel, at least.
Yeah. I can see that completely. And then the way I look at it, and a lot of buddies I know, and the reasons we want deployments after we've deployed, or we tend to kind of look for them, volunteer for them. It's a different lifestyle when you're deployed. You're the only thing, I know this sounds crazy, and I don't mean for it to sound negative, because it's not, but the only thing you worry about when you're deployed is living or dying. Whether you're in a safe area or not, but that's your focus. You're not worrying about the stress of everything going on around you, so to speak. Ideally, I wasn't married when I was deployed. I know people went through some horrible things being separated from their families deployed, but it was liberating in a sense. You're kind of, I felt like I was living life more when I was deployed than coming home and worrying about, they messed up my Starbucks, coffee today, or they messed up my McDonald's order, whatever the case is. When you're deployed, you're living your life, to the natural, physiological sense of it. And the friendships you make, like I said, the buddies that I deployed with, we had great times together over there, bad times together, but it brought us really close. I had a lot of buddies, we got married, me and my wife got married in 2011. I had buddies come that I had served with, and I had people I went to school with that I didn't even really invite because we weren't that close. You know what I mean? People I had known all of my childhood, I didn't even want at my wedding, as opposed to people that I'd served with.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, everyone thinks high school is a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
Especially for the group of people that you're dealing with right now. Those people may or may not be there in 10 years.
100%.
I mean, it's going to be,
Yep.
especially when you make, and I hate to say it this way, real friends.
Mm-hmm.
You have brothers now.
Yeah.
More than the one that you already had.
Yep.
You have brothers.
Definitely.
A family.
Yeah.
So.
And you did something that was worth doing. And
Yeah.
that's, high school, it's something we all do, but the cliques, the arguments, the drama in high school, it's moot in comparison to life.
No doubt.
So.
Yeah, I mean, and not to go off on a tangent here, but we went to high school together, and we never really, I don't really remember interacting too much with you, and I'm assuming the same.
Yeah, so many people that when I left high school, I didn't think social media was even going to become a thing. I didn't think I would really see, talk, or interact with anybody really again.
Especially with your plans.
Yeah, and then, social media picked up. You get people from high school adding you again. And then some of them, it's great reconnect. You kind of get a little bit of friendship and whatnot. But then others, you're like, this is why I didn't keep in contact.
Right. Yeah, it's not. I wish I didn't have to talk to you or see your nonsense and drama.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Drama is a good word for it because there's plenty of that in life, especially high school. And, many of us, we want to mature and move past things.
No doubt.
Some people don't. And you have to cut people out of your life in order to fully be successful, in my opinion. So
yeah, not to go off too far, but
no.
I hope that some of your recruits see this.
Oh yeah,
or parts of this, whatever parts you want to show them, and say
understanding, grasp it.
Yeah,
and that's
a good way to put it.
Yeah, experience is the best teacher, and that's the hard thing we have. I don't know how many times I've told my story to some degree, and to anybody who's not done it, it's another story. It's another. When you've been in the military, you get it. When you're interested in that type of stuff, you get it. But that's the frustrating thing with me for recruiting, because there are a lot of people back here who will admit that they want something better, or their job isn't what they want, or they're struggling, or whatever the case might be. But the minute you talk about military service, it's a slap in the face. It's like, I've had people tell us, I'll do that when everything else falls through, or I'll do that, plan Z versus plan B, that type of thing.
It makes no sense.
No, and it's frustrating because we can't take everybody. I don't know how many people away every week for not being eligible. So that's why I tell people, if you're going to wait until everything else fell through, don't count on this even being available for you.
Yeah, no doubt.
So,
it's not an old man's game.
It's not. And the ASVAB is the biggest thing. That's what I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but we give the ASVAB out probably 10 times a week, at least some degree of a practice test or whatnot. And if everybody could pass the ASVAB, I don't think the military would need people anymore.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's baffling. I don't know if it's the changes in the education system, social media distractions, whatever the case might be, but I took the ASVAB one time in my life, and I was done. That was it. And the recruiter's like, oh, okay, good job. And I didn't know. I got like a 73. I was like, okay, that's a good score. Nowadays, if you can get a 40, that's great, like amazing.
No way.
Oh, yeah.
You're kidding me.
We get single digits, teens,
my gosh.
And it's frustrating because I wish I could help, but you're talking to adults. It's hard to teach you everything from the ground up if you can't get at least some kind of close score. But so that's why I tell people, don't count school out. School is important. It really is. Whether you want to stay educated and go to college and do other things, pay attention, at least to the degree. And, I was lazy in school, but I was interested, so I listened, but I didn't necessarily partake, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
But
you're going to use some of it at some point.
Exactly.
They don't teach you it for 12 years for nothing. So,
and teachers are to me the first, for everybody at least, should be the first quality mentor you may have in your life.
Yeah.
Mr. Cable, my 7th grade history teacher, I ran into him about 2 months ago or so. Very impactful in my life. Very impactful.
Everyone says that about him.
Yeah. He wasn't afraid to scream at you, and that's something I think more people need. So,
amen.
Teaching nowadays, though, my heart goes out to teachers and cops. They are vital parts in society, and they don't get the recognition or support that they deserve to mold society. They're the ones that shape us. Your fear of breaking the law, your desire to do better. We need teachers and police officers.
Well, and they wear multiple hats.
100%.
Multiple hats.
Yeah.
But off that, I mean, back to Iraq.
Oh, yeah.
So, no, great
No,
discussion.
I go off on tangents.
Yeah,
a
well,
lot.
no, and I don't mind. I just it's your interview. I want it to be about you,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
about the world. So
So for me, like I said, the surge kicked off. So it was in March 2007. This is when President Bush, the initiative was, we're going to flood Iraq. We're going to overpower the terrorists, and
Okay.
we're going to outnumber them and increase operations. And we were already there. So the focus, because we were already there, that's when our extension was set in stone. So this was as soon as I got back from leave. So I get back, and it's noticed, hey, Doc, it's official. We're here 15 months. I was like, son of a bitch.
good thing you're prepared for it mentally,
Yeah,
though.
we knew ahead of time it
Yeah.
was probably coming. But then that increased operations. We were we did 21 days straight, 21 days of missions straight to offset the wait for the influx of new soldiers. Went on cache searches. So I got to do, and that's what I tell people too. I got to do a lot of awesome things that you never get to do outside the military. So digging up, I know this sounds kind of crazy shit, but digging up mortars, digging up, we found a lot of caches while we were there. So we'd dig them up. We'd use a landmine or a mine detector, dig up the rounds. A lot of times we'd find 50 plus rounds, and then we'd have to cache them for EOD to come out. EOD would set the explosives, and then we'd all clear the area and we'd set them off.
Well, right now we could use that ammo over here.
Oh yeah.
No.
We'd find some crazy ones. So we had white phosphorus, a lot, or Willie Pete, as people call it. So you'd see those go off, and then just be like fireworks on top of it. Sparks shooting everywhere. And it's like, well, we're glad that one wasn't used against us. And that was the focus for cache searches, is we needed to kill the supply for those that were going to use them against us and themselves and other people. So by us being actively engaged, we were finding where these people were storing them. And they would never store them at their houses because they knew if they were caught with it, they were immediately guilty. There was a different trial system. So they knew that they would store it on somebody else's land, or they would, put it in the corner of a field somewhere. So we kind of had good intel on where to look, and we were frequently finding these things.
So wait, you said trials. You mean these people don't just get killed and we just throw them away and, they're all bad guys? No, they get due process a little bit.
They get due process through their court systems and whatever the case might be.
So Big Brother, Big Bad America doesn't do all that?
Not that we had seen.
No,
can't
me
say
neither.
that.
I just want
to
squash some rumors there.
Yeah. Let me see. So I do have another thing. I have, if anybody's ever interested in a video, I got a YouTube video out there of one of these caches that we set off. So we found one day. It was we found 33 chlorine canisters. So we actually had issues with chemical warfare.
Really?
Yeah. There's a video. I got this video that it took me 10 years to get a copy of this video, but we had inadvertently EOD had set off a chlorine IED in our AO, not knowing what they thought it was, like a acetylene or something. They're like, oh, we'll just detonate it, fuck it. And so you can see the green cloud and everything, and chlorine's heavier too, so it like settled low.
Right.
And we were essentially told emergency, like evacuate. We were out in sector, out on missions, and it was like, you gotta leave the AO. They're like, we're leaving. Yeah, like, get out now. And
can you send me a link to that?
I don't have that video online, but I can send you the other video. I can get you. I can get you a video of the chlorine. But the cache that we found, the giant cache we found 33 chlorine canisters, which is good because we knew we weren't getting attacked with them at least. So they took those and safely disposed of those. And then we also found that same day 700 pounds of what we call HME, homemade explosives. And a lot of those, they'd be cached, it kind of looked like rocks, but they would use like JP8 and fertilizer and things like that to create stuff that would go further. Or they would find old munitions from, the Desert Storm era and the war with Russia's and whatnot. And they would drill out the rounds to remove the explosives so they could make them go further, so they could stretch the use out of them.
That's ballsy.
Oh, yeah. We would find hand drills. We would find munitions that were already drilled. Yeah. You would find people with fingers missing. You would hear, like one day we heard an IED go off, so we investigated. Bone fragments, black tire marks. This guy was putting an IED in and set it off. His buddies, whoever was there, took whatever was left and left with him. But, no, so we cached the 700 pounds, and then we wanted a video of it.
Yeah.
So we went the furthest closest house was only like 200 meters away. So we're up on this house and we're hearing AOD, we're on the radio, we're hearing them, we're like, it's too late to run. Like, I don't think we should be here. I think we're too close. But we're laid down in this house, and they set it off. And it's this giant mushroom cloud. You can hear in the video, it blew all the windows out of the house that we were on top of.
Oh, crap.
And it buried a crater. We just sat it on the ground. It wasn't buried, but it blew a crater into the ground that was 6 feet deep and 20 feet wide. So it was nice to have gotten rid of all that stuff.
Yeah,
but
that
it was
could do some damage.
crazy explosion, because that was our fun. Like, anytime we found an IED or found a cache, we wanted to see a big explosion. We wanted to see something crazy. And so that was the biggest one. Like I said, I got a video. I'll get you a link to that video.
I'd appreciate it.
But yeah, so then moving in from the surge, going into May is when Mama Dia come under attack. And that's when we had kidnappings take place with the 431 soldiers. So with that, the whole focus of the rest of our deployment was we had to find these guys. So, and it was the same, like, you would have it instilled upon yourself as I wouldn't want to be left behind. I'm not going to leave somebody else behind.
No.
So from mid-June or mid-May, you know, we all had the hopes, you know, that we want to be the guys, we want to find these people now. So we were on mission every day for weeks. And
you didn't care to do it.
Didn't care to do it. It was our job. It was our
I don't want to put
purpose.
words in your
It was
mouth,
our
but
purpose.
yeah, you felt
Yeah.
that inside of you that you needed to do that.
Exactly. And so we were out. We were doing. This is when we were going to raids. We were raiding houses.
Right.
We did 2 air assault missions when we were there. So air assault missions for us were essentially we met up around, so we call it dark 30. So it was about midnight, 1 o'clock, and you know, kind of ran through a prep. So we spent about a week planning this out, doing what we call dry runs, or so to speak, sand tables. So we knew what the house would look like. We knew how we were going to approach it. We knew what time of day we were going to approach it. What my job as a medic would be, what everybody else's job would be. And then it came to execute it. So we went to the flight line. We met up with our Black Hawk crew that were going to be escorting us. We had 2 Black Hawks and the whole platoon. And then we left off for that. We landed probably about 2 a.m. And this is always a funny story I tell too. I like this one because it's, you know, if you're there, it's funny. Other people are like, oh, that sounds horrible and scary. But so we land. It's pitch black out. We had our nods on, and the goal, night vision, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So we land, and the goal was, because I had my aid bag, which is a bitch of a thing to carry as it was. Couple of other guys, the dismounts would carry heavy stuff. So our saw gunner had the extra ammo. Our RTO had the radio, and you know, we all had our weapons and whatnot. So the focus was the Black Hawks would land, pitch black. All gear would get thrown. Everybody would jump off. You'd go into the prone. The helicopters would take off. So they did that, and then I'm looking, like, you see everybody, you grab your stuff real quick, and we're to assault into the houses, like a 3-house complex or so. And we're going to go house to house, clearing the houses, bringing all people, men, women, children out to make sure everything's clear. And then all men would be detained for questioning. So we landed. We're assaulting towards the house, and I'm looking through my night vision. I got my aid bag on, carrying my M4, and I'm just seeing everybody drop. I'm like, what the hell? What is this? And I'm running, and there's a canal to cross that nobody knew was on the map.
Oh, no.
Nobody knew was on the map. So instinctively, yeah, I'm seeing, and everybody's just hitting it suddenly. And I'm short again. I have a 75-pound aid bag on my back. So anytime I go in water, it's like I could drown ultimately.
Right.
And so I'm running, and instinctively, like, other people are already climbing out the other side. And they knew to watch for me, to watch for the RTO and the saw gunner, because we're carrying the heaviest shit. And so I hit the canal on my impulse. I was like, I have to jump. So I just jumped as I hit it and threw my M4 so it would clear. And there was already people, you know, with their arms out. So luckily, I kind of got grabbed as I hit the other side.
That's great.
But it sucks. And I used to always get on my PL, Captain Hastings, and anybody who was leading our dismounts, because for some reason, anytime we were out walking, we found water. We'd always be, and it would always, I was like, you know, I'm carrying an aid bag, right? We go through this water. I got a 75-pound weight on my back. For you guys, it's easy. You just run across this shit.
Right.
I'm dredging through the ship, and it'd be like halfway through a 12-hour mission. So now, stomach down, waist down, I'm soaking wet. My boots are full of water. My aid bag, the bottom of it's wet. And it's just like if you threw a cat in water and the look on its face. That's how I always felt.
I'd have been pissed.
And that's what I always tell them. Like, you guys, we could walk around this shit. You guys always go through it. And here I am, the disgruntled medic because I'm soaking wet. All I ask is to keep me dry. But we get to the house, we pull them out. And we work with a lot of locals. That was our job. We were increasing the strength of the law enforcement there. So we partner with the the up-and-coming Iraqi army to do these. So they were actually the ones leading it, and we were there to support them. And these guys are grueling. These guys are screaming at these guys after they detained them, beating the crap out of them. Our ROE, rules of engagement, is we detain them. We make sure they don't have anything. We're not to beat them up. We're not doing anything.
Right.
These guys would take these guys in the back room. You'd hear them screaming. These guys would come out crying. I'm like, it's their culture. And that's the other thing. We're talking with my buddy. It's a cultural thing. That's their culture. That's just how they grow up. It's different than us. And that's something I love about the military is the culture and diversity outside of our United States that I got to experience.
Right, no doubt.
That I got to see. And that to me really I always appreciate, and I have a lot of patriotism regardless of how things are. But seeing another culture and seeing another, society, and I tell kids this too, we're lucky, number one, to even have been born in the United States. There's 7 billion people in the world, and 400 million of them in the United States.
You hit the lottery.
Statistically, yeah, you could have been born anywhere else. To have been born in the United States, whether you want to love it, hate it, I promise you, if you were anywhere else, you would probably be trying to come to the United States.
You'd be running to that border.
So, but no. So with that, I mean that was the big one. Other air assault mission we did was just kind of real low key, but we took probably 15 detainees. We had to have essentially one group come back with an empty helicopter, and then we just throwing them on the helicopter with us.
So I have this vision, and you can tell me if it's right or wrong, but I see you, like, not you, but you guys coming back to the base with a group of beat up detainees, and everyone just like, what did y'all do to these guys?
Oh yeah, no,
that had
to
be quite the experience. Of them got
beat up, but yeah, it's because we this is the only time we really worked with our PSYOPs people. So these guys are the ones that do the interrogations and do all that. So when we rolled up, we essentially got off the helicopters and they got them on just a big truck on base.
Okay.
And they hauled them to a detention center, to a detention camp, essentially. And then we pulled security, escorted them to the bathroom and stuff like that if these guys needed to go to the bathroom. And then just made sure that they each had interrogation time to be questioned. And then from there, essentially after everybody was cleared, those that were cleared were given clearance that we escorted them back. We dropped them back off outside their village, and that was that. So, but from there, I mean, that was our exciting air assault time.
So you did get to use it.
Did get to use it, not sling loading, but and everybody else did. I mean, not everybody. Most people weren't air assault
right
or qualified or whatnot. But
hey, listen, if you could, I'm with you on that. I'd have taken it too.
Oh yeah,
in a heartbeat. So don't ever.
So one other thing that I always bring up or like to bring up in my story, well, it depends on who I'm talking to, I guess.
Yeah.
So we had one instance, a lot of people talk about like suicide bombers and craziness and stuff like that. The majority of our issues were IEDs. But we had an instance, and this is a guy that I like to talk about, and I really promote his story, and I hope that everybody will go look him up, Staff Sergeant Travis Atkins. So in June, and this was one of our last big stressful moments. Things really started winding down for us. I'll explain afterwards. But so June 1st, Sergeant Atkins, he was with 2nd Platoon, was on route security for us. And him and my roommate is now Sergeant First Class Travis Robert Shaw, was his medic. So they dismounted. They had seen two strange-looking individuals just walking, kind of, suspicious. And they were not to be, that was the agreement. People weren't supposed to be crossing the road, and these guys were just walking down the road, believed to probably be on something. But they approached them, and essentially conflict ensued. Mm-hmm. And Sergeant Atkins had wrestled one of them to the ground, got in hand-to-hand combat with him, and protected my roommate, Sergeant Robert Shaw, from the detonation. So through his
Yeah.
actions, he was actually recognized at the White House 2 years ago with the Medal of Honor. So I actually got to go, and this was nice for me because it was a reunion. We had probably about 35, 38 of us got to go to the White House, and it was a 3-day event. So we got to go meet with Sergeant Atkins' son and his family, and all come back together. So, and then President Trump awarded it to his son posthumously. And this was something that was nice because shortly after our deployment, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, which is the second highest honor. So we were all kind of disgruntled, and something I've always kind of complained about over the years is that it was deserving of the Medal of Honor. So they've been doing a lot of reinvestigation and looking back into other awards, especially with the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts, to say, were these written up properly? Was the right award warranted? And another one, for instance, that's going on right now, which I'm a big supporter of, is Sergeant Cash. So
I don't know Cash.
Yeah, Sergeant Alwyn Cash. So I would look up his story as well. So he should be, ideally, this will be under the Biden administration. Hopefully, they do the right and get it done pretty soon. But his family has been pushing for his award since 2000, I believe, 5. So I would look up his story as well. I always say that I don't want to get too much into people's story because I really appreciate it, and I expect people to go do a little bit of research, go look up these people.
They have to, yeah. Have you heard of Dakota Meyer?
Yes.
Okay. Have you read his book?
No, that's the big thing I will say. I'm not much into books, but I try to get more into them. So,
well, his book, and I know this is kind of a personal anecdote. When I read his book, and speaking of awards, he is a Medal of Honor recipient, and Dakota. When he at the end of his story, he talks about the award process, and he said it's so freaking political.
Oh yeah, and that's what I knew about it, and that's what bothered me. Yep.
And people who deserved the Medal of Honor don't get it. But then when you read his story, if and when you read his story, I'll write the book down for you, audiobook it or whatever, Into the Fire for those of you who are listening. But yeah, it's you'll get that same exact sentiment from him. And his fight, his kind of struggle with medals.
Oh yeah, so. Yeah, and that's a lot of us. Even when most of us get any kind of recognition, it's we do this for our brothers and sisters. And that's what the veteran community is this way because of our sentiment for one another, our camaraderie, and when most all of us will say when we get acknowledgement, it's because of those around us. It's because of the opportunity we had or the teamwork, and to recognize one person, it's a team effort in most all cases. Yeah,
from a promotion on up, I mean, all the way to retirement.
Oh yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, leading up through after Sergeant Atkins was killed, he was our only casualty.
I'm sorry to hear that, man. That sucks.
He's a good mentor. He's a guy that I definitely, because of his not even his sacrifice, but the type of person he was, I've used that and kind of instilled that in my trials to be a quality NCO and leader. But following that, we redirected our approach to the conflicts, and we actually had one of the terrorist groups that I was talking about. They became kind of known as what was termed the Concerned Local Citizens, or CLC. So they came to us while we were out on route security to essentially bargain. So they wanted to work with us to combat Al-Qaeda because they didn't like innocent people being targeted, citizens. They didn't care. We signed up for what we signed up for in their eyes, Al-Qaeda, and they did. But they had kids at risk. They had innocent people at risk. So they came to us and said, if we can get a contract with you, we will turn over everything we know. We will help you set up checkpoints. We will tell you who's involved and show you where the caches are and all this stuff. So that became a very, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Expendables, but it gave me a very kind of piratey, almost cartel feel, because we used to set up checkpoints with these guys. So we'd go out to the middle of BFE in Iraq, just 4 trucks. These guys would show up in their vehicles with their ski masks on and AKs, and it's like, well, if they're gonna attack us,
this is the perfect opportunity.
But it's their setup. It was their meeting. So, and that was where we'd barter our agreements, and then so after June, they were turning stuff over to us, and it became almost an entirely safe area for where we covered. So roads that we didn't touch because you were guaranteed to hit multiple IEDs, and at the time, was the big dangerous thing, was called EFMPs, which are also known as shape charges. So these shape charges would cut through a Humvee like butter.
Okay.
So those were the concern at the time, the major concern. Our IEDs that we would hit would do some damage, maybe crack a windshield, but for the most part, they were loud and scary. That was about it.
Right.
But these guys would turn over these things, and this road then became a major road that we ended up using, even though we wouldn't touch it the entire deployment because of the knowing that this road is, I think we called it IED Alley. It was guaranteed you were going to hit stuff. But after that, it was an eerie feeling to be driving down that road regularly.
Oh, it had to be terrifying.
Oh, yeah. But after that, I mean, for the last 3 months we were there, it was a completely different area.
So the hearts and minds that we were talking about earlier were really won over.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, like I said, they still talk about the Triangle of Death as being stable today, and that was, I left there in November 2007.
And let me say, obviously you have a big contribution to that. So I mean, I know they thank you, but we thank you here too, because it keeps everyone else safe too, man.
Oh yeah,
it keeps us safe. It keeps the brothers and sisters who are still in the fight out there, safe. So that's, dude, that's a great.
Oh, it's exciting stuff, but it's definitely good knowing, because that's the frustrating thing. Like you said, you hear people who don't know what they're talking about, and they'll want to regurgitate what social media and what the media tells them, and it's just grain of salt. I've learned a lot of patience in my life, and is what it is. I know the people I've worked with and things that I've been a part of. So,
well, and one more note here: you're still 20. You're still like a 19-year-old kid.
Yeah.
I mean, think about.
I turned 20 right before. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The impact that you made on the world as a 20-year-old kid. I mean, and anyone can do it. So, all right. So you want to leave Iraq?
Yeah.
You want to go away from there? You want?
Yeah.
Are you got any more? Do you have any more stories from Iraq?
No. I'll sit different time, different day, I guess.
We'll have a beer or something.
Yeah. But so yeah, we returned November. It was actually, I want to say, Veterans Day, November 2007.
Okay.
That was probably one of my most memorable moments coming home. Yeah. Having family, a welcome ceremony. And then we were given a pass to come home. So I actually went back to Irondale. And it was weird because Irondale growing up never really did much community-wise and anything like that.
Right.
But coincidentally, they were doing a Veterans Day assembly. So that weekend that we were home, initially it was like, hey, we also have these two that just came back from Iraq. So it was nice to get in front of. It was eerie, though. Coming home from a deployment, it takes a long time to readjust. And I'll say that in a scary sense. It's just you're doing something for so long in such a different environment that you have to have time to decompress.
Well, I think you made a good point earlier about it being life or death constantly.
Mm-hmm. And it's the adrenaline. I learned a lot in my last reserve unit. It was actually behavioral health. And they teach us a lot about the effects of, those types of emotions for such a prolonged period of time. So knowing that now helps me, understand things from the past better. But yeah, having that much adrenaline and that mindset for so long, it physiologically takes you a while to come back down to a normal level in a healthy sense.
Yeah.
So, and that's what many people need the time for. And for me, I still had 2 years left. So I got back. My contract wasn't up until early summer '09, and it was different though. And this is where it kind of sucked because we had a lot of people coming back from the deployment that were now getting out. Their time was up, or were moving on to different stations.
Right.
And if you've never seen Band of Brothers, I actually, shamefully enough, just finally finished it. But the end of Band of Brothers reminds me of that because they were together for so long and then they come back after the war and it's like everybody goes their separate ways. Yeah. And I really like organizations like this because it's important to stay connected with each other, keep tabs and stuff like that. And that's the one thing I like with social media. That's really the only reason I had it for the longest time.
Yeah.
But yeah, we started rebuilding, started getting new soldiers. I became more of a senior guy, and I got put in charge of being a senior line medic. So my brother, I don't want to dig too much into his story. Like you said, I'd like to have him come out here.
I want him out here bad.
So my brother was a line or an aid station medic for a lot of our deployment, and he was the type, he was the same as me. He wanted to be doing something. He wanted to be active.
Right.
Excuse me. So the opportunity came up for him to become
while we were deployed to become our scout medic. So our sniper platoon. So those guys were very selective. They were very, you got to be up to the snuff, because we do, so to speak, super secret squirrel stuff. So if you're a medic who's soft, you're a medic who's weak-minded, you're going to be a detriment to everybody. So my brother, after like 2 other medics kind of didn't meet the snuff, they didn't want to push my brother out to a line because I was on a line. So, but the opportunity came up, and he got to go out and be the scout medic for the last like 6 to 8 months of the deployment. And they love it still to this day. I mean, those are some of his closest friends, were the scouts that he got to be the medic with. But coming back, we both got assigned to different senior line medic positions. So I went from Delta Company. I left Delta Company. I went to Charlie for a brief period, and then I became Alpha Company senior line medic. And then my brother got moved to Delta, became Delta Company senior line medic. So with that, I mean, we were both, and this is a fun story that I like to tell too. If Sergeant Major Glenn is listening, I apologize. I said I wouldn't tell people, but so during our E5 promotion, so for us to go to be the rank of a sergeant, you have to go to a promotion board, which is a review board. So you have to be recommended, and then the day comes, you go to your board, you're in your dress uniform, you had to study and all this stuff. And then when your name comes up, you go in. It's a process of how you actually walk in, march in, report, answer questions, and you take the directions essentially from the tower, as we say. But when I was to go in, my sponsor, because you have to have a sponsor for the board, came out, and he said, hey, Sergeant Major and the first sergeants want you and your brother to come in at the same time. And I was like, are you serious? I was like, I don't want to do this dog and pony show. I know what they're about. And sure enough, so he's like, yeah, they want you guys to knock and come in together. And then he closed the door, walks back in. I was like,
they're totally messing with you,
oh,
aren't
yeah.
they?
Well,
aren't they?
They liked, and that's the great thing. When you're a good medic, especially the fact that we had the deployment behind us, people know you.
Right.
People, especially in an infantry unit, if you're a good medic, you can't do any wrong in their eyes. And so they had us knock together, walk in together. They had 2 chairs set up. They had a salute together. And the first thing they tell us, they're like, we don't think we're allowed to be doing this, but don't tell anybody. So if anybody listening, you hear this, you didn't hear it from me. But yeah, so we knew it then too. It was like, they're not going to deny it. They're not going to tell us we're not recommended. Otherwise they wouldn't have done this, because they're very serious. That's the thing. If you're an infantryman in an infantry unit and going to a board, I've seen them come out crying.
Really?
I've seen them come out crying. Yeah.
Wow.
I've seen guys go in for 3 seconds and they're already kicked out. So
okay, we got to talk about that. Hold on, we got to talk about
moment.
that. Yeah, because I know nothing about boards like that. So what's the process then? I'm sorry to interrupt your story, but I need to understand.
So you have a way you have to knock, and they always tell you got to knock with confidence, but you'll have some people that are arrogant when they do it too. So you boot the door or whatever, but you got to knock. Wait to be told to enter. You enter, you close the door, you march in the most direct route to the center of the table, which will be the sergeant major.
Okay.
You'll have 2 first sergeants, which are the head of the companies. So 2 first sergeants on both sides, so 4 total. So you have 5 people on the board. You salute, you report. So you'd say, like, at the time it was specialist. So specialist Gorrell reports to the president of the board. You wait for him to do what he's going to do and salute you back. And then from there, you stand at attention until they tell you. They'll usually have you do facing movements.
Okay.
When they're done with the face, because they're looking at your uniform. Your uniform has to be pristine. And we're also
Understood.
watching your facing motions to make sure that you know what you're doing, at least with facing motions. And then from there, they'll typically tell you to have a seat. So you sit, you got to sit a certain way. And then they'll ask you to introduce yourself. So then there's a way you have to go about introducing yourself. They'll introduce themselves, and they'll say, this first sergeant's going to cover these categories. This first sergeant, these ones, so on and so forth. And then they start. So they'll go down the line, 1 first sergeant at a time, and then the sergeant major finishes it with questions. So they may also, at the end or at the beginning, they may have you sing the Army song. They may have you do the NCO Creed or the Soldier's Creed. For the 10th Mountain Division, they have you do the 10th Mountain Division song. So it's a lot about taking pride in your history and where you come from, which is something I always say about the Marine Corps. The Marines are always about tradition, which I really love and respect. But that's what a lot of the units, especially infantry units, are about that too. I really took a lot of pride in knowing what my battalion did before me. Like the 214 infantry, they took part in the events of the Somalia in '93.
Yeah.
So when the 10th Mountain Division was called in, it was the 214 infantry that came in to help the Rangers. So every year we do what's called the Mogadishu Mile up at Fort Drum.
Okay.
And that's a 2-mile run with all of your gear on, and that's to commemorate the actions that took place in '93. But it was nice knowing that people from my battalion had done something that prestigious and, acknowledged worthy. And so our history goes, 214 history went all the way back to the Civil War. So we had to learn, the big things they did along the way. And I'm sure, Sergeant Atkins, I know he has a gym up there named after and dedicated to him. So I hear that they learn about who he was and stuff like
That's
that.
amazing.
But so yeah, board. Anytime you screw up or you're overly nervous or overly arrogant or things like that, you push their buttons, you're gonna know it. And that's a lot of where, especially the infantrymen, they don't cut them slack because it's an infantry unit.
Well, I'm just thinking infantrymen come out there crying. I mean, that's got to be some intense stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Well, you're nervous. I will say nerves have a lot to do with it.
that's true. That's a good
Because
point.
it's an all-day process. So
really?
It's an all-day process. You'll have 15 people recommended for the board. You could be in there 5 minutes, or you could be in there an hour. And they'll start in the morning. They'll take a break for lunch, and they'll have you come back in the afternoon to finish. So your process could only take 5 minutes to an hour, but you're waiting, and that's the hard thing is knowing. You see people come out like, oh yeah, it don't look like he did well. Other people come out doing well.
Yeah, but you don't really know for sure because, I mean, it's
No,
how they judge you.
Exactly, and you don't get it until the end, so they don't know if they're recommending you until the
man.
end. So I've had buddies, that got bronze stars and things like that, and they go in, and the sergeant major already knows them, asks them how they got their bronze star, and that's their entire board. Has them leave.
Oh, wow.
Like, you're good. That's kind of what it was for me and my brother. I mean, they played with us a little bit. It was like, so the first sergeant said, you guys are going to tag team this. He's like, what you don't know, your brother can answer. So I was like,
Having your
shit.
brother around's been
Yeah,
a
yeah.
real help to you this whole
Yeah.
time.
I knew more than he did with that because they even our Alpha Company first sergeant. He even said, I'm not going to ask Specialist Gorrell any questions. I think he deserves to be an NCO. I was like, too easy.
Oh, shoot.
So yeah, it was nice to be respected and appreciated
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And that's what a lot of people in the military, that's what they anticipate transitioning out is going to be like. I've never been in a civilian job that has appreciated me as much as the military has.
No.
And that's what a lot of people miss when they transition out. They think I did my time, I deserve my place of honor, and then they transition out, and it's like, welcome to McDonald's. How can I take your order?
Mm-hmm.
Or you got a manager who knows less about the job than you do, and you got to listen to them. Or you go to college. Like that's what I hated. I went to college, and I was 22 years old at the time. 18-year-olds, all they wanted to do was party, and I was here to actually pursue something, and it's like, I feel like I'm back in high school.
It's brutal,
you know what
dude.
I mean? But
Brutal.
so no, we made the selection, and a month later I got promoted. 2 months later he got promoted, and
I love that you got that back now.
oh yeah,
I love that. So he
outranked him. I
yeah.
outranked him with the E5. He got out as an E5. I'm 87 now, so that's kind of
Oh,
something.
congratulations.
Thank you. So we share kind of. That's what I like. I'll talk with him about my accomplishments because I really feel like it's a part of him too. It's a
No
part.
doubt.
My accomplishments is in part because of him.
Well, and for those of you who don't know, E7's a big
Oh
accomplishment.
yeah.
Being
it's-
inducted into the senior NCO
Mhm.
Corps
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
awesome, man.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah. It was for me. It was a proud moment because it got my career back on track, which I'll get to in a little
Yeah,
bit.
sure.
But, so when I did a couple more years, about 18 more months up there, and then I knew that my time was coming up to ETS. So at the time, there was word of another deployment. 10th Mountain got a break because of how high tempo we were. Big Army come down and said, you guys have been on too high of a tempo. You guys did some great shit in Iraq for 15 months. We're going to give you 18 months home.
Oh, that's
I
great.
missed at the time they were doing what's called stop loss. So
Yep.
I missed the stop loss window because of that. But on top of that, they redirected their deployment from Afghanistan to go back to Iraq. So everybody I know that went back to Iraq regretted it because they didn't do anything. It was like mandatory fun days and stuff like that. I was like, if I went back to Iraq and did that, I would lose my mind. So I missed that
sure.
deployment. It did suck because I had a lot of young mentees, so to speak, apprentices that I helped to bring up as medics and infantry soldiers that I saw climbing up the ranks, that was their first deployment. And I didn't get a chance to go with them on that. But the one side note I will say, my first platoon sergeant, infantry platoon sergeant, Sergeant Hayner. So I'm still, good contact, good friends with him today. But coming home, he was telling me, hey, my son Tony is going to be joining the Army, and he wants to be a medic. So his son became one of my soldiers when we came home.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So, and he became a sergeant himself. He's a great soldier. I'm in contact with him frequently too. But yeah, he climbed up the ranks and is a great medic and was a great soldier while he was in. But it's just kind of one of those small Army kind of story things. Like,
right.
His dad was my platoon sergeant. I was his team leader for a period, and he became a senior line medic eventually too. And then he decided to transition out for his family. But now I made the decision though, about 2 months before my ETS date, that I wanted to try college, and a lot of that was my wife and I were dating at the time, and it was a long distance thing. And listening to a lot of people say, well, you didn't go to college. You probably should have gone to college. Everybody should go to college, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, something, I don't want to be ignorant about it. I need to see what this college thing is about. And I was like, and I got the military behind me to do it. My GI Bill will take care of it. So I was like, I'll take a break. I'll go pursue something. And for me, I love animals. I'm an animal-driven person. I don't know, if you tell me you don't like dogs, then you're probably a psychopath. But I like animals, and I realized I like animals more than people.
Nothing wrong
I love
with that.
medicine, so I was like, I'll go get a degree in animal medicine. So I applied. I went to the Vet Tech Institute in Pittsburgh. I transitioned off active duty at my ETS date, and I got into the Army Reserve. And my first reserve unit was actually in Wheeling at the 463rd Engineer Battalion. That's up near the Ohio County Airport.
Okay.
I immediately was assigned as the platoon sergeant. So as an E5, I was the medical platoon sergeant for a reserve unit. Very small medical assets at the time. There's only 2 other medics. But we grew as my years went on there. And I went to school at the Vet Tech Institute in Pittsburgh and got my associates in vet medicine there. Really enjoyed it, but like I said, it kind of opened my eyes to the real world again. And to me, it was just a lot of noise. A lot of, bickering. Nobody had the quality things instilled in them that you see in the military. And I was like, I'll get my degree, I'll move back home, and I'll get a job, and everything will balance back out. So I moved back here after college. Me and my wife got our first apartment in 2011 in Wintersville, and that's when I officially, set root here. And I couldn't find a job. So I didn't get so much as a job interview as a vet tech. So that's the one sad thing that I say. I like animal medicine, but my degree has never done me anything. Glad that the Army had to pay or did pay for it, but it was a waste. Gave me good perspective on the real world, but then I turned to manual labor. That's really I wasn't going to go back to school. I wasn't going to take another chance. The hard thing was the economy here was dropping. So manual labor was really all that it was at. I will say one side note, my one and only fast food job was right after college. I worked at the Steubenville Walmart Subway.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. If you don't know,
most embarrassing job personally I've ever had. And I say that because I started there. I was 23, I think. 5-6 years in the Army, 15 months in Iraq, college degree. I had people we went to high school with that I would fill their orders.
Dude, you've done some shit with life at this point.
I know. And that was a gut check for me. I stayed there for 2 months, and just having people I went to school with, and I'm like, I feel like a failure. I was like, I need something
I would have too.
more. So I went to, I got into water blasting. So my mom's old man at the time was into water blasting. My brother-in-law, my little sister's old man, he had done it at times. So they were able to actually put in a good word for me to be able to get hired on. I worked for Alex Paris Contracting out of Burgettstown. And then I water blasted actually in Monaca at the BASF Chemical Company. So I did that for about 2 years. I liked the camaraderie of it because it was kind of similar to military. It was a different thing every day, grueling job, paid pretty well, but I was driving an hour or so one way every day.
That's a haul.
And then, we knew we were going to have my daughter. So my daughter was born, and I knew this is a dangerous job, and I don't feel like it was worth my risk when at the end of the day something happens to me who's going to take care of my family?
Nobody, and they're just going to replace
Yeah.
you.
So, and that's most civilian jobs, I would say.
So can I stop?
Yep.
So that's kind of funny because dangerous job. You're still in the reserves. You can still deploy. I mean, the Army is not a safe job by any stretch of the imagination. So it's funny how it was okay to stick with the Army.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But not. But there is a little bit of benefit to that. If you
There
die
is.
in the Army, you're going to be your family will be taken care of.
But for me, I always look at it: is it worth it? Is the job worth your efforts? Is it worth the higher power, so to speak? And the military to me has never been a question about is it worth it.
Oh no.
And I got lucky. I wouldn't say lucky, through my networking and the opportunities that the military was throwing at me. I put in my promotion packet for staff sergeant, and the reserve was a little different. So when I got picked up, it was for a slot. So that slot was in Coriopolis. I didn't know it at the time, but it was for a combat medic position as an occupational therapy assistant. So that means, because at the time it was an additional job as being a medic. So when I went to the unit to report and get my E6, they said, well, this is an occupational therapy position. So taking this position, you have 12 months that you have to agree to go to the school. I was like, well, if the Army's paying for it, I'm all in. So obviously, the Army pays for all our training. So I had a few months that, to kind of weigh it out and then talk with my wife. She's a PTA. So PTAs and CODAs, Certified Occupational Therapy Assistants, tend to work hand in hand a lot in the civilian side. But she was able to give me insight to what the job is like and stuff like that. And my goal was to use that as a stepping stone into a civilian job here.
Okay.
So, I figure I'll let the Army train me. It's another degree, but I'm not paying for it. It's another, training certification.
So this is not going to be MOS number 2, right?
This would be MOS number 2. So at the time, it was an ASI, but when I got to training, the Army said we're going to make it an MOS.
What's an ASI?
Additional skill identifier.
Okay.
So as a medic, we had what were called ASIs, which meant you had to be a medic, and then you would go to another school to get something like, something in nursing or something in respiratory therapy.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it would give you medic with something else. But then the Army said, we got too many medics that aren't medics, so we're going to make these things their own MOSs to open up medic slots. So for me, I got, through the reserve, it was a guaranteed training seat. So they just had to reserve it and schedule me, and I went to it. So it was an 8-month training. So the rough thing for my family at that time was my daughter was born, and then 2 months later, I left for training.
That would be difficult.
Yes. So again, having my wife's family back here and my family back here, it was a good support system for her, but it did compound stress to her job and my training as well. So I spent 4 months in Fort Sam Houston again as a prior service student, but I was a staff sergeant at the time. So for me, it was a little intimidating because I was coming from the reserve back to a full-time status. I was a staff sergeant going back through an AIT, and it's a tough course. So the Army uses the terms a lot, drinking through a fire hose, and that's how these programs a lot of times are. It's a lot of information in a short period, and then you're evaluated to make sure that you know the standard, if you know the material you're supposed to know. So the awesome thing about the program, though, is at the time it was the only certificate producing program in the country that allows you to test on the outside to get your certification as an occupational therapy assistant.
Okay.
So otherwise, it's a 2-year program to get an associate's degree to be eligible to test. Now the Army has made it a prerequisite course, meaning you have to have certain classes done, and then when you graduate the Army's program, you also get an associate's degree now.
That's great.
So, but through that, like I said, I did my 4 months. I actually graduated at the top of my class. There's only 13 of us, but I learned to apply myself through that program.
Don't say there's only 13.
I know.
They're top of your class is top
I
of your
know.
class, man. I'd put that on a resume.
Yeah. Hopefully, I don't have to write any resumes.
No, I'm
anytime soon,
joking.
but
You know what I mean?
But so I got to do our phase 2. So it was a didactic portion where you're learning the material and you're getting tested. And then you have a residency portion where you're in a clinic actually working. I got lucky. I got to work at a hand therapy clinic at Fort Campbell, which is on the Tennessee-Kentucky border. And that was the culmination of it is completing that. And then when I came home, I had the criteria and I was able to apply. So I applied for it and passed, which that was a stressor for me, but I passed my certification and became a West Virginia licensed certified occupational therapy assistant. But then again, I couldn't find a job. So I was offered PRN work, is what we call it medical side. So it's as needed, was the most work I could get. And like my wife said, I said, but she agreed. 27 an hour is what they offered me. Talking with everybody else, it was like 5 hours a week. I was like $5 or 25 or 27 an hour, 5 hours a week ain't gonna pay the bills.
No.
So from there, I went back to manual labor. I worked in Salem for about 6 months at Mac Trailer, working on tractor trailers. And then I applied for and kept looking into getting hired at the Walmart distribution center here in Wintersville. And after 6 months, nowadays I'd say it's a little easier to get hired there. But when I was applying, it took me 6 months to get an interview. And then I got hired immediately, and I was working afternoons. So I worked afternoons there for about 2 years. And the rough thing, my wife worked daylight, my daughter was in school in the morning, and then I was working afternoons. So it became relatively 2 years of us seeing each other in passing.
Yeah, just high five and see you.
Pretty much. And it was nice because it was 4 days a week, so I had Fridays off, Saturdays and Sundays. But then I still had my reserve time.
I was just going to bring that up. Yeah, so
I still had reserve time, so I would do that 1 week in a month. So on average, I got to see my family 6 days a month. But that's, you got to do what you got to do to pay the bills.
No doubt.
But through the reserve, my focus was always to come back full time. I love the Army. I love the camaraderie. My second reserve unit, the one that I got promoted into and became an occupational therapy assistant for, was behavioral health, so psychology. So I had a lot of mentors there that were prior enlisted, that were officers, or that had done something amazing on the civilian side and then came into the military. So my reserve unit was relatively small, but we had about half of the members were officers, medical officers.
Okay. So doctors.
Primarily master's degree programs. So
Okay.
like, say it's psychiatry, psychology, social work, occupational therapy. And I think those are the big four that were up there. But I became really good friends and used, they mentored me a lot with our psychologists and psychiatrists.
Okay.
And a few of my buddies, social workers, are kind of the reason why I'm pursuing my next step, which I'll get to with the military. But I would always ask them about what they did to get to where they were at, and that's kind of what I started gearing towards. So I started looking into routes to come back full time. So through the economy at the time, about 2012, the military wasn't taking everybody. Not saying we're taking everybody now, but being prior service, I've never been in trouble with the law. I don't have any medical issues. I like to think I'm in pretty good shape for being 33 years old. And talking to a recruiter, I used to go to my recruiting office and try to come back in. And it was, we don't take prior service. That was the end of the road. We don't take prior service. And that was because the military was downsizing. So
Yeah.
I took other avenues. So we have a program that I'm in right now. It's called the Active Guard Reserve Program, AGR. And with that, you are a full-time Army Reserve soldier. So typically, they evaluate your MOS. So for me being a 68 Lima, which was occupational therapy, they don't have that in the AGR realm because, believe it or not, there's only about 80 of us in the whole Army.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
So
it's a very small portion. Yeah.
that's cool, though.
Yeah, that's what I like.
You're one of few.
Yeah. But with that, because I didn't have an MOS available, they said, well, we need recruiters. So if you're willing to cross-level train and become a recruiter full-time, we'll take you to the AGR program as a recruiter. So for my wife, that's what I told her. I was kind of hoping that was the incentive because I figured it would maybe keep me locally anyway. And so I accepted it. And then I used to go to our recruiting station. I said, hey, I'm accepted in the AGR program. What's the chance of me coming here to Steubenville? And at the time, Sergeant Jones, the AGR recruiter that was there, was like, hey, I'm leaving in June. Like, there's a pretty good chance you could probably be my backfill and come in. So we networked a little bit. I went to the schoolhouse, and while we were there, we kind of played around, and we sat down the day to pull up, assignments. And they were like, because AGR recruiters, we get to choose our assignment so long as it's available. So we sat down, and they said, we got two choices for you, but we think we know which one you're going to go with. And he said, we got Kent, Ohio. He's like, we got Steubenville, Ohio. I was like, obviously my wife would kill me if I didn't take Steubenville. I was like, Hawaii's not available.
Right. Puerto Rico.
No, yeah.
I mean, come on.
So, but yeah, I volunteered. I wanted to come back here. And the main reason for that is because I knew I would be back in the schools that I was a part of. I knew I would get to be, like, I tried to at least be a big part of Edison. and pay it forward. That's what this job has been for me. My focus was helping soldiers when I was, full time and when I had soldiers. And now that I get the opportunity to help people at the start of their career, it's a very rewarding feeling. Very stressful at times, obviously, very, taxing, or can be, especially with COVID. But when you have those that you get to impact their life and redirect their course, it's almost like you had a kid who, went off and was super successful. It wasn't your kid, but that's something I would hope. My daughter's only 7. 10 years from now, if she could have quality mentors in her life, that would make me and my wife sleep better at night.
I'm sure it will.
But so with that, like I said, I've been out here 4 years now. April, actually, 17th will be my 4th year. We cover 17 different schools. So I always tell people, as long as I've lived in this area, I always thought I was a part of the community, but I never realized how little that was until I got into recruiting and actually was able to invest into different organizations, all the different schools that we cover, and just be the eyes and ears and kind of the voice of the Army to our area. People don't realize that the reserve is here.
No.
They don't realize that there are many veterans in the area, many people actively serving. And, we ask people all the time, do you know where your closest reserve unit is? And people will say, oh, Columbus or Cleveland, and they don't realize, like, Weir High School. Weir High School has a reserve unit right next door.
I had no idea.
Yep, 336. So my replacement, Sergeant Clegg, he's a good guy. If he listens to this, I got to give a shout out to him. But he's from the 336. So he just came in. He activated as an AGR soldier from a local reserve unit, and he's going to be working here for the next 3, 4, 5 years, taking over my position.
Hold on, wait, where are you going?
Okay, that leads me into my next thing.
Well,
so
can I interject one more time?
Yep.
And I know I've done it a couple times, but honestly, if you're telling kids the way you're telling me, if you're talking to kids the way you're talking to me, and if I had a recruiter like you, I wouldn't feel lied to. I wouldn't have, and I was, and I don't want to go into my story. This isn't my story, but if you're having conversations with kids like this, man, I would be proud if my daughter joined under you. And that's the honest to God truth. I mean, you've got a great story. You can tell people exactly how it goes. I mean, you've had many opportunities that a lot of kids in Steubenville, Ohio will not get. And you've just accepted life and kind of rolled with it and done what you needed to do. But all right, so let's hear about your next opportunity before I go too far.
So, like I said, I really, through my last reserve unit, because I was at a point, I'm not going to lie, I was at a point in the reserve where I didn't only want to be full or part-time. And I told my wife, if it's only going to be part-time for the next, 15, 20 years, I think I might just be done. I might just consider trying to invest wholeheartedly into something else. For me, 1 weekend a month wasn't enough. I enjoyed it, but I wanted to be invested full-time. But talking with the officers that I worked with and hearing about how they became medical officers and providers, I started kind of putting my ear to the ground about what is my next step. So I've always had a passion. I miss being a medic. I miss working with soldiers and providing medical care. So the last 3 years, I've been using tuition assistance, which doesn't touch my GI Bill.
Right.
But I've been using tuition assistance to take care of my prerequisites to apply to become a physician assistant. So the Army has a program that they've partnered with. It's called the Inter-Service Physician Assistant Program, and it's partnered through UNMC, the University of Nebraska Medical Center. And it's a program that we have to apply for once a year. And if you're accepted, the Army will take you on for 3 years, pay you, house you, as if you were an active duty soldier, and you will get a bachelor's and master's degree in physician assistant studies. So last March, I applied for the program, and then June, I found out I was accepted into it. So I leave in November. I start training, and I'll be gone for a better part of three years or so to get my master's degree. And then when I complete that program, it's a commission to first lieutenant, and then a fast track to captain and moving up the ranks as a medical officer. So a PA in the Army is essentially your go-to initial doc. They work over the medics. And that's something I want to get back to. I loved being a senior line medic and mentoring my medics. And our PA was a great aspect for that. We get to learn things that medics never get to do. And when you take on medics and teach them that, you're multiplying their capabilities for the Army. So,
well, you'll do great. I mean, you've obviously done great in everything you've done. I mean, and you've seen many different aspects of the Army. So yeah, there's no reason to believe that you won't. Hell, you'll probably be a top of your class.
We'll see. That's the goal. But it's cutthroat. It's a grueling process from what I hear. But I'm looking forward to the challenge. That's something that when I know something's coming, I want to get there and do it now.
Yeah.
That's kind of been my pain right now. Is I don't start till November. The good thing is I got to take all my vacation time because I'm coming off of active to reserve again. So that's the other good thing. This is for a reserve program. So when I finish it, I'll come back and I'll be a reserve PA. So, but to come off the program, I have to use all my vacation time. So I'll be on vacation for about 4 months before I report there in November.
All right, well, some of the stories that we didn't talk about, me and you are gonna sit down and chat about.
Definitely.
Yeah, we're gonna have a beer or something after this. So the Library of Congress does have a couple questions. Like first off, and you've you've covered it greatly, but what do you want to know? What would you tell somebody? What would you want someone to know about a veteran? Like
about a veteran?
About us veteran, yeah.
I've said this a lot. I did an interview with Edison, I think 2 years ago for Veterans Day, and something I really pushed about is just listen to veterans, especially the World War II veterans, the Vietnam veterans.
Yeah.
Listen to their stories. The thing I love, I don't know if you're familiar with the Vet TV push.
I love it.
Veterans, typically it's the camaraderie aspect about it, and you see it even outside of the veteran community. You see your football players, hanging out with football players and sharing stories about their time in football. But when it comes to the veteran community, I feel like we're overly misunderstood.
I like it that way.
Treated. I get what I get, but talking with us and sharing our stories, sharing the experiences, will help people to better understand our livelihood.
Right.
Will better understand us as people, because that's a big. I think about this a lot too. I've been in the military almost longer now than I haven't been in the military, but this defines us the longer you're into more of a degree. So when something defines you so much and then other people are passive about it or misunderstanding about it, it almost nullifies it or downplays what it means to you. When something is so important to you or such a big part of your life, to have it treated as, not something worth even talking about.
Yeah.
And that's what I really see with the Vietnam vets. And those guys were treated, horribly, to say the least. And just letting them share their stories. Pretty soon the World War II vets, you're not going to be able to hear their stories.
Right.
And that's, a sad fact, because that truly is the greatest generation. We owe a lot to them. And
we don't shine a candle to them.
No. And the Vietnam vets, the same thing. Those guys, a lot of them just need somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
And it's when you shut them out and you ignore them, that makes it even worse. You're ignoring the trials and tribulations that they went through. We all go through rough things in life, but the difference is their sacrifices did something for all of us.
Especially in the veteran community, I can't express that enough. Mm-hmm. They're the ones who paved the way for the VA and the VA disabilities that we have. I know that you haven't taken advantage of that yet, but you have no idea the fight that those guys went through. Yeah. It was not you. I'm sure you understand, but those of you who are listening, they had, that signature right there. I know you can't see it, but that Jack Ernest, he has, wanted to introduce you guys.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But and finally, is there anything else you would like? Any story we missed? Anything I didn't touch on that you want to hit before you go?
I think it's a pretty good recap. So if you guys ever want to hear more, hit me up.
Yeah. He's still a recruiter for a while, right?
For a few more months.
All
I'll
right.
introduce you to some good guys. And that's our group of guys. I have a lot of pride in working with them because we are very like-minded individuals. Because I have met people and I get the stigma. And I thought that when I got into recruiting that, we're going to be the stain on the wall of the Army, so to speak.
Right.
And your experience is what you make of it and who you work with. So,
well, listen, man, if they're like you guys are doing a great service to the Army.
I appreciate it.
Through the Ohio Valley. And we need more of them because, I know when I got in, I was lied to. You got ignored by the Air Force. So, So we appreciate you. Thank you for coming in. I can't thank you enough. It's been a wonderful story.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
And we need to get your brother in next.
Oh, yeah. I'll talk with him.
And then if you want to come and sit and listen in on it, you can. It's not a problem. But, so, Sergeant Gorrell, thank you again. And then I think we're done for the day.
All right, thank you.
All
Appreciate
right,
it.
sir.